I'm not paying them anymore.
It could have been way worse.
It could have been so much worse. It could have been
So much
you
worse.
with the milk mommy
That's true.
eyes.
That
you
was
know?
a solid 60% what I thought it was going to be, so I appreciate it. Thanks, Cam.
Also, that was the Ace Man, not you.
That's a good point.
That is
very
all
true.
this
How could
very,
we
very
forget?
true. Welcome, everybody, to Kind of Funny's The Shining in Review. One of the rare times we actually go back to one of the classics that most people wouldn't necessarily think of as a film franchise, but it's spooky season. We do have our Kind of Funny up-and-comer Madeline Stanley here today.
Hello. So happy to be here.
She loves spooky things. She loves
I do.
everything Halloween. So we're like, let's get something fun. And you were talking about wanting to do these mainly because of next week's movie.
Yes, very excited for next week.
Dr. Sleep, which is directed by Mike Flanagan. So that's the reason that this is all coming together.
goat.
And you'll be joining us for that as well, just remotely, not from in the studio, because of course you're here all week doing a whole bunch of shows. You having fun so far?
So much fun.
Love
It's
to
going
hear
by
it.
so fast.
2 days down.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. 3
to go. We're going to have so much more fun ahead. But like I was saying, this is Kind of Funny's In Review, where each and every week we get together to rank, review, and recap different movie franchises. If you like that, you should get the Kind of Funny membership. You can get the shows ad-free. You can watch them live as we record them, and you get a daily exclusive show. If you want to not support us financially, that's cool too. You can just subscribe on podcast services. You can watch on YouTube. Just search for In Review, and we will be right there for you. I want to give a major shout out, though, to our Patreon producers, Drummer Boy, Casey Andrew, James Hastings, Nathan Lamoth, and Carl Jacobs. You truly are the best of us. Today, we're brought to you by New World Eternum, but I'll tell you about that later. Of course, I am Tim Geddes. I'm joined by It's Christmas in October, Joey Noel,
Hello, I'm here.
the up-and-comer, Madeline Stanley,
Hey.
the tastemaker, Roger Picorni,
Hi.
and the producer slash seducer, Nick Scarpino.
Ran round.
There was a lot of that.
Yeah.
A whole lot of that.
Is
We
that what
planned
the
that one out.
whispering
That
was about?
Yeah,
That was
that's.
so
okay,
good.
okay.
I didn't know when we were doing it. I thought we were going to do it later on.
We
in
were
the
going
show.
to, but I called them all, but it just
Yeah.
felt right.
Yeah, it felt
Okay.
good for
That's
him.
a classic Nick
Feel the
maneuver
moment
there.
out.
Yeah.
Everyone, today we are talking about The Shining with a runtime of a surprising 2 hours and 26 minutes. I would have never guessed a horror movie from 1980 would be this long.
When's the last time you watched a Stanley Kubrick film?
Yeah, I was going to be like, when it was under 3 hours, I was like, oh, it's not that bad.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah.
That's wild.
I think 2001. I'd be curious to see what his longest film is, but I always think Stanley Kubrick is just synonymous with like outrageously long run times.
Yeah. I mean,
Good, but,
2001
like,
I get
slow.
because it's a space odyssey.
What's a Clockwork
This is a
Orange?
horror movie. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
we'll get into that
We'll
later.
talk about it.
This is released on May 23rd, 1980, directed by Stanley Kubrick, who, Nick, tell me about him. What's your experience?
I mean, Stanley Kubrick, Clockwork Orange is 2 hours and 16 minutes.
Oh, shorter.
Kubrick is one of those directors that you study. I mean, Kubrick is one of the classic up there with like Hitchcock, up there with I mean any director. He is on the Mount Olympus of all times. He's done movies like A Clockwork Orange. He's done 2001: A Space Odyssey. He has done this film that he is very noteworthy for, and just one of those incredible all timers. Really. Yeah.
I mean, directing movies from 1952 all the way to 1999, from Fear and Desire all the way through to Doctor Strangelove or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, which is all one word, one name, which I love. Of course, Clockwork Orange, 2001. We have a Full Metal Jacket, Eyes Wide Shut. So, whole bunch of stuff from Stanley Kubrick, and I've seen none of them until this.
Oh,
This
really?
was my very first one. I've seen bits and pieces of The Shining, and I've seen bits and pieces of 2001, but I've never actually, and Clockwork Orange, but I've never actually seen the movies.
Yeah, I was kind of obsessed with Clockwork Orange for a while. And then I tried reading the book, and I was like, I'm not smart enough for this.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because it's written in the style of how they talk in the book or in the movie, and it is very difficult to get through. But no, I mean, it's 2001: Space Odyssey is one of those like just quintessential sci-fi like classics that if you watch for no other reason, just watch it for the cinematography alone.
No.
That's beautiful.
Are any of you big Kubrick
This
persons?
is also the only Kubrick film I've ever seen. I think I've seen bits and pieces of a bunch of them, but even without seeing them, I feel like they're referenced and parodied in so many things that like feel like I know them, even though I
I've
haven't.
seen Strangelove before in film school, and then I dropped out. And
Cool.
I was like, so this is my second Kubrick film.
Madeline.
Yeah, I've seen 2001, Clockwork Orange, Strangelove. I feel like there's another one I'm forgetting.
There's Barry Lyndon in there. Full Metal Jacket's the one that I always come back to. I don't know
What
if you
is
ever-
Full Metal Jacket?
So Full Metal
Is that
Jacket
the Turn
was
It Up to 11 one?
no,
No.
that's Spinal Tap. Very different.
Very
movie.
different movie.
Never
Full
saw
Metal
that either.
Jacket is a movie about Vietnam. It's starring Matthew Modine and Vincent D'Onofrio and quite a few other cast of characters. And it is one of the most, that and Platoon were the two movies in the 80s that made me very, very happy that my father survived, that particular conflict, and that I never have to fight in a war because it is horrifying. Full Metal Jacket specifically, I don't know why I've watched, that probably is the Kubrick movie that I've watched the most. And I don't know why, because it is really hard to get through. Not from it's a bad movie, from the fact that it's such a great movie, but it's such a hard subject matter, and he does not pull
Like a
back from
Saving
it
Private Ryan.
at all.
kind of.
It is,
Yeah.
if you think Saving Private Ryan, just think Saving Private Ryan in Vietnam
Ooh.
with it just somehow even more horrifying things that happen.
This was based on The Shining by Stephen King. Obviously, Stephen King, a very prolific novelist, mainly in the horror genre, but a ton of other things as well. Nick, I know you've read a bunch of his books, right?
I have. I've never read The Shining. I should. I recently. Not Stanley Kubrick. Stephen King on Writing is one of my favorite books ever. If you guys
it's
ever get
such
a
a
chance
good
to,
one.
it's such a good book. It's half tutorial on writing and half just his biography of how he did all these things and what that meant, the state of mind that he was at. Speaking of which, he was, obviously a severe alcoholic at points where he doesn't remember writing specific parts of like books. And The Shining is one of those instances of themes that seeped in from his personal work into or his personal life into his work. And so obviously the character of Jack is an alcoholic. You see that spiral downward in specifically the book, I assume. I've read it. And here you don't quite get it as much. You understand that he is a drinker. We have that backstory. But I think one of the reasons why Stephen King, if I'm not mistaken, was a little disappointed with this film was because that was the main theme of like, this is what alcoholism does to a family. It tears it apart and turns you into a monster. And I don't think you quite get that from the movie itself. But Stephen King, amazing. I grew up watching his movies. We all love It. The newest It, Chapter 1 or Part 1, Part 2. Those are some great movies that came out in the last couple of years. And yeah, he's just got a massive anthology of horror, and sci-fi movies.
And everything,
books.
right? I'm just looking at his wiki here, and it's like, we got Carrie, we got The
Cujo.
Shining, we got Stand By Me. I didn't
Stand By
realize
Me.
that was
Yeah.
him. That's crazy.
That's another one of those where you go, hey, when I was a kid, I remember realizing that Stephen King made it. And then I had already seen it.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, Stephen King? And then I watched it again and I was terrified.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right?
What's going to happen?
It's scary.
No, but I know I've seen this
You know
movie.
what
I
happens.
know
That's-
it's just a heartfelt.
That is very
He
funny.
also I think more notably also, I think he wrote The Running Man. That the book that movie was based off of, but his
He has
public
355 IMDb credits.
Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, he did
Yeah.
Shawshank.
Green
I don't think
Mile.
he did the Green Mile also. So he wrote a bunch of books
Dark
that were sort of
Tower,
like in the
Misery.
supernatural
Christine?
sort of a Misery. Yeah, he's definitely Misery.
Yeah, he did
and
Misery.
he's had a ton of works made into
Did you do
movies.
Christine too.
Yes.
Probably, arguably one of the most. He's probably our most prolific like American pop culture writer
Definitely.
for sure.
Yeah, I love Stephen King. I've read so many of his books, but I haven't read this one, and I wanted to read it before coming here. It did not work out timing because I've always heard, it's so much different than the book, but I haven't read the book. I was speaking with someone who had, in one of their big comments was just that the characterization that Jack Nicholson gives, that character is quite a bit different than it is in the book, where he's a little bit more likable in the book, where you kind of
Struggle.
you see he's more of like a tragic villain rather than just like. He seems kind of like a horrible person in this movie.
From the
Well, it's very interesting, and I'm interested to hear y'all's perspective on the film in general, because for me, that is one of the things that makes me a little bit hesitant to love this film. I've seen this movie a couple times throughout the years, but I've never gravitated toward it, back to it, like I have something like a 2001 or a Full Metal Jacket, and I think it is that loss of innocence that we don't have in this film specifically, and this is no disrespect to obviously the GOAT, Jack Nicholson, who I love in everything that he's ever done. But Nicholson for this was, before this, my touchstone for him was like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest or like Easy Rider or like any of these movies that he was in where he plays this kind of like messed up character in a messed up situation that gets more messed up. So when you see him in this movie, you're like, yeah, he's going to turn into a monster because he's already there. And he's kind of a dick to the kid the entire time.
Yeah.
And so you can imagine how Stephen King watched this and was like, hey, this should have been a John Voight, or this should have been an actor that's known for being wholesome, like a John Lithgow would have been
Yeah.
great for this.
Oh.
And then when you see him start making that turn, it is more shocking. Whereas this one, in the first sequence where he's a dick to Wendy, when he's writing and she interrupts him, you're like, that just seems like this character has been that guy for the entire time, and that's so it does lessen the impact of when he goes crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my biggest thing that I was writing, which is just that like I wanted him to be more of like a tragic villain where you feel bad because it is the hotel that's making him this way. Not that he always was just a piece of shit and it got exaggerated
Right.
and exacerbated by being in an evil place, but that he was this guy who was trying really hard to be good, and all these circumstances like the alcoholism, like the evil that's present in our lives is like making him do bad things, rather than I feel like believing that he's like inherently maybe not a very nice person.
I could
Totally.
see, knowing Kubrick though, I could see, or Kubrick, I'm not sure how you exactly to pronounce it. I know someone in the comments will be like, you're totally wrong. I could see why he specifically would be like, no, I like it better that this guy is kind of an asshole and kind of dark and kind of a child abuser and kind of an alcoholic. And then we start there and then we can push him even farther down from there. So I kind of can see, based on his movies, that might be the case, but
I know we're jumping around a lot, but I was reading, I was trying to figure out what the differences are from the book, just from like looking at Wiki. And it seems like one of the biggest changes is there was a alcohol fueled incident in the past in the book where he breaks the kid's arm.
it's in this movie too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Oh,
mention
okay,
it in
right,
passing,
yeah,
but
yeah.
you don't really get a ton of details.
Yeah. Crazy stuff though. I'm like, that is just so messed
It's
up.
dark.
I
Yeah.
kind of like that he starts off as an asshole in the movie, just because I feel like throughout as it kind of unfolds, you're like, is it supernatural? We kind of had this
He's
similar.
just going crazy.
Yeah.
with
This is
Cabin
a similar
Fever, yeah.
conversation that we had off camera yesterday about what were you watching? Not Salem's Lot.
Salem's Lot, yeah.
Salem's Lot.
Yeah.
Where
The
it's
new
like
Salem's Lot on HBO.
Are we actually going to call out that we think that this hotel is making him crazy, or
Right.
like for the it's
Yeah,
vampires,
yeah,
but like
yeah.
when are we going to acknowledge that like it's not just him and there's like extenuating circumstances? So maybe because we'd had that conversation before I watched it, that's kind of how I had watched it with that lens.
Which is
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
You know, it is. Side note, have you read Salem's Lot?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
That's a good one.
I need to read that one too. I read all the Dark Towers. That was a really disappointing adaptation.
Was the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the Dark Tower
Not a
series is like
favorite.
is what everyone says is like the pinnacle
They
Stephen
keep
King, right?
saying that Mike Flanagan might attempt to do it, and that would be my dream.
Before we go too far off on a tangent, though, are you familiar with the Dark Tower stuff, Tim?
No, I just know it
And
just
I-
This is the
made a bad movie.
gunslinger, right?
Anecdotally, I am sort of familiar with this, so please tell me
Yeah.
that I'm wrong. But the concept is that like a lot of Stephen King's books are in fact a shared universe,
Mhm.
and so the Dark Tower is sort of like that series kind of brings sort of that together, right? Or am I thinking something else?
No, they're
You're
right.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah,
Which
like
is wild to think that it might be in the same universe
It definitely
as The
is.
Shining,
Kids.
as Silver Bullet, which is one of my personal favorites that no one knows.
they are.
about.
Like Derry is referenced in the Dark Tower series. So is the Overlook Hotel. Like Stephen King does a really good job of having this sort of like realistic things like this with this like low hum of supernatural, and the Dark Tower really embraces the supernatural aspect of it and kind of how it all connects, that there's like this supernatural evil that's bleeding out into mundane life and making otherwise good people, maybe like Jack, like do these really evil things because of a general evil seeping through the world, which is kind of an intense thing to think about.
Yeah, that's so cool. And one day HBO is gonna be like, we're all in on this, and they're
Yeah.
gonna
All
make a
in.
badass miniseries.
Mike
out of
Flanagan
it.
would be so dope.
Flanagan
for
would
it,
be
though.
great
Yes.
at it.
I've also heard those rumblings.
So this had a budget of $19 million, just for a little perspective, and obviously there's inflation and whatever. But Joker 2's was $200 million.
It's always going to go back to that.
You know what I mean? Like, I mean,
That's
but
the
real talk. Like, I
comparison
know
point.
it's
Give and take.
easy to joke about for a million reasons, and also we literally just did that last week for in review. But I would say that in a lot of ways they are similar movies in terms of very few
Definitely.
characters, very few set pieces or settings, and they just reuse the same sets in different ways over and over. And we got a couple high-profile actors, which I got to imagine even back then
Jack
Nicholson and Shelley Duvall were.
Yeah.
Shelley
she
Duvall
might have
maybe
been on
not
her
so much, but Jack
start,
Nicholson
but-
for sure
And so I'm just like,
would have been well known at this time.
just interesting. Different times,
Interesting.
different stuff, but very interesting. 19
All comes
million
back to Joker
to
too.
200 million.
His web
Okay.
connects us all.
Yeah, this was 80. I think he had already done China. Oh, maybe he hadn't done Chinatown. When was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? Hold on. I'll look it up.
And then it had a box office of
he was
$47 million. The awards for this movie are interesting. Reactions to the film at the time of its release were mixed. Stephen King criticized the film due to its deviations from the novel. The film received 2 controversial nominations at the first ever Razzies in 1981. Worst director.
Which is crazy.
Worst director
crazy.
for this movie. What are we talking about?
They had like 5 movies back then. You know what I mean? They had to choose. They had to choose.
Like, we
Holy
gotta
shit.
choose one.
That isn't like the direction of this movie is impeccable. Like,
Yeah.
what are we talking about? And worst actress, the latter of which was later rescinded in 2022 due to Kubrick's alleged treatment of Shelley Duvall on set. Critical response to the film has since become very favorable, frequently cited as one of the best horror films of all time. The film was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant in 2018. Having said that, Roger, you've been the most quiet so far on this episode, so I want to hear from you first. Have you seen The Shining before, and what did you think of it this time?
Red round.
I do my entire review like that.
Oh my god!
It's always interesting to watch a movie that I have seen so many different ways through episodes of Family Guy, through pop culture, right?
Simpsons.
I know Red Rum. I've heard it forever. I've
Here's
seen,
Johnny.
I've seen the fucking axe scene. I've seen the 2 little girls. Like, I've seen it so many different ways. So I'm like, okay, how are we actually going to impress me? Like, am I just going to see all this stuff and just be like, whatever? And I was impressed. I was impressed with all the context that I was able to gain from this entire movie and from all the kind of snippets that I've seen. And it scared me. And the biggest standout is the kid here. Like, this is the greatest child acting and actor I've ever seen. And he was like the linchpin of this entire movie. I feel like if that kid was not good, or if the kid was just mediocre, I'd be like, yeah, it was good, but like it didn't really live up to my expectations. But that blew me away in a real and genuine sense. And the cinematography of this entire movie, even the beginning of like the sweeping shot of the helicopter and then going over and then seeing all of, like the cars that are stopped on the side of the road, like it starts off and it continues and continues and continues. And I did not expect the themes of alcoholism and abuse and like going back to the beginning of the conversation that we had, right, of like wanting to have Jack be this character that is more sympathetic. I found that he wasn't sympathetic, the more interesting angle to go by it, right? Of immediately it seems like, at least for me, as like, oh, how is this family going to escape this abusive, awful human being that they clearly, the wife at least, knows it, but she's trying to like kind of talk around it, especially with the child doctor, and she's like saying the story, and she's like, oh, it's just a funny
Just
little
one
thing.
of those things that happens.
Just happens, right? So
Like,
you're
does that
waiting
happen?
for it, and it, of course, it's inevitable, but that is the interesting angle of it. There are a lot of things, not a lot of. There's one storyline throughout this movie that I do not like, and I think is underserved, actually overserved, that we'll talk about later. But other than that, like, this is an absolute classic, and I'm happy I watched it. And I'm very, very, very interested to see what Mike Flanagan brings or has brought for Dr. Sleep, because that is a movie that I would see the posters. I'm like, there's no way that's gonna be good. And like, after watching this movie, I'm like, oh no, that kid is the most interesting part of this movie, and I need to know how he grows up and becomes Ewan McGregor. Like, I need to see how he
gotta
becomes
know.
Obi-Wan. I need to see it.
Exactly. What color will his lightsaber be?
We need to know. Madeline, have you seen The Shining before, and what do you think this time?
Yeah, I have seen The Shining. It's been a while. I think it's one of those classics that I watched at some point, you know, back in time during Halloween, where it's like, oh, I gotta catch up on this. It was really good to watch it again, because I think it's probably been at least 5-10 years since I've seen it, and just appreciate it from a different lens, from a different perspective. One of the things that I was kind of thinking about when watching it now was the isolation factor and how differently that kind of hits after 2020.
Yeah.
And like watching that now, being like, wow, yeah, like the isolation really hits home of like not being able to contact anyone, not being able to get out, and how that would definitely cause some issues with your relation to yourself and your relation to other people.
Oh, yeah.
And feeling a little bit more, I think, sympathetic about that than I think I might have been in the past, where I was like, what, you have this big place and you get to do whatever you
It's
want?
only 5 months, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nothing bad, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is the 5-month thing, because if it was like 2 weeks, like that could be interesting.
Yeah.
5
5
months
Yeah.
in the snow, no radio, no phones, very little radio. Tough one.
Nick, what do you think?
I mean, this movie's always good to go back to. Again, it's not it's a classic, and it is an undeniable classic for all the reasons why we've talked about here. I think the cinematography is great. I think the production design is amazing. Specifically, the fact that they recreated all these interiors on studio sets
Wow.
is wild. Because if you actually look, there's they took inspiration from a bunch of hotels that are one of the hotels that is the exterior of this still is. You can go rent the room. I looked; it was like $240.
Can we go?
It's in Portland, or it's in Oregon.
Field trip.
They went around and they took design cues from rooms, bathrooms, all sorts of hotels all over the country. And one of the interior of the lodge is a place that still stands. I think you can still go there, and it's almost exactly the same. And so to me, I was like, I'm like talking to Dee when we were watching this last night. I was like, I'm like getting in my film school dork.
Film
I was like,
bro
it's so
Nick.
cool that they shot all this stuff like practically
Yeah.
on location. I look it up. It's like, no, they recreated all these sets to the point where I forget which movies were waiting. I think it was a Spielberg movie, like Raiders or something like that. They were waiting to shoot it, and they had to wait like 6 months or something like that because Kubrick wanted to shoot everything in order, which
Oh my
pushed
gosh.
everything back months. Of course, Kubrick, very, very famous for doing hundreds of takes or 60 takes of his scenes and just destroying his actors. So to me, it's interesting to see how all that plays out. This movie is not a beloved film for me. I don't hold it sacred. I like going back and watching it every once in a while, but I think it's eerie. I think it's freaky. As I watch it as an adult and you measure it by today's standards, I don't think it's particularly scary. I don't think it's necessarily, it works as a horror film. I think it works more as a psychological sort of like examination of these
Thriller,
characters.
yeah.
When I was a kid, it terrified the hell out of me, specifically the two girls. That was always the freakiest thing for me. They just appear out of nowhere. But as an adult, I love seeing all of the lore that goes into it. I love seeing all of the actual technical aspects that went into the filming of it. And I think the performances are phenomenal. So it's definitely up there for me because of that.
My turn.
Go for it.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen this. Like, I distinctly remember the first time watching this in 6th grade. I was at my best friend Emily's house. Her parents were gone. We were upstairs in the cool bonus room that had a pool table.
Bonus rooms rock.
That's so sick.
And we watched it, and we were
gotta go.
so scared, freaked out. Didn't watch it again for probably like 10 years. Like, we were just like dumb kids at home, and it was dark, and we were like, oh, we don't like these creepy children, all of them. So yeah, when I put it on this week, I was really surprised to see that it was 2.5 hours, and like it didn't even really feel that long to me at all. Like I just felt like really engrossed in the story, and there were so many things. I feel like it's so easy to remember the like memorable moments, obviously, and then realizing like, oh, this is way deeper and darker than I kind of thought, because I had kind of forgotten about all of the Jack Nicholson alcoholism and like that he is just an asshole throughout the whole thing. So I was like, oh, in my head I had remembered him way more sympathetically. But his performance is so good, even if it's not necessarily what the source material would have required. I just think that he really embodies the like assholeness of it all. And like, I honestly do find him really scary. Obviously not in necessarily a horror way, but just like in a bone chilling, like, oh, you've got some demons.
I think the sequence that comes to mind for me is when she's backing up the stairs, and you're like, oh my god, this guy.
Yeah.
Like, that is quintessential Jack Nicholson. Where you're like, this is terrifying right now, but
Yeah.
not because he's scary, because this guy's unhinged
Yeah.
and violent and abusive.
And the faces he makes
Yeah.
are just like
Yeah.
unreal.
When he's staring out the window and
It's
they're
his
outside and they're
eyes for
walking
me.
around, it's like, holy crap.
And yeah, Shelley Duvall, I have such like fond memories of too as a kid with all of her like fairy tale kind of theater stuff. And I think she's so good. It's crazy to me that she was nominated for a Razzie, but I guess that's just like how perception changes with time.
I think it was her outfits. They just really didn't like them, and they're just like, okay.
Are you
we're
kidding me?
gonna-
Because I was like, everything she wears is awesome.
I hated it so
By the way,
much.
everything Danny wears, the little kid, is like totally in style right
So
now.
cool.
He
All
has a
those
pair of like
sweaters.
oversized brown corduroy pants that I'm like, dude, I would rock.
The kid looks
those.
dope.
Yeah.
The
I
kid
wanted
looks
his
dope as hell.
Apollo 11 sweater.
The
and
knit
also,
sweater? The one she made him?
Yeah, and also the one of Mickey kicking a football. I was like, if Disney put that out, they would charge me $120 and I would pay it.
Okay.
but yeah.
Scary goofy doll in the back. the whole
Yeah.
time.
Oh my gosh,
okay.
can you imagine? And then yeah, I was just kind of taken away with how beautiful it was. Like the lighting in this movie is so good, especially as they're like running through the maze and stuff like that. I'm like, dang, it was kind of hard. I feel like I felt myself getting lost or distracted from the story by being like, oh my gosh, look at how all of this is shot. So maybe I need to go back and do like another deeper dive.
That is something I noticed as well, which I feel like we don't see as much in a lot of modern movies, which is like the use of color. Like he's using so much color in all of the rooms and the outfits and textures.
Very controlled.
Yeah, but it's
very,
like very specific
controlled.
and it's beautiful. And I feel like we sometimes hit like a drab gray vibe with film.
Millennial beige.
And I like how the color is used. I would love to see more people use color in that way.
I'm such a dork. I go down a rabbit hole of like modern day camera stuff, and I'll go down a rabbit hole of like custom LUTs, which are called lookup tables. It's like a color look you can apply to flat footage, and people love the look of these films. Like this film specifically, like you'd pay top dollar to make your modern day Sony camera look like the color palette of this film.
Yep.
Yeah.
What about you?
I mean, honestly, like this was a phenomenal movie. Like I've never seen it, and echoing a lot of what was said. Like I know this movie just through, like Family Guy pop culture references, but then also memes. Like him standing there frozen at the end. I can't fucking believe that's a scene that was in the movie. I thought that was photoshopped. I thought that there was some edit or something. No, that's just in the movie, which makes it even more fucked up.
Yeah.
But the way that all the pop culture references I knew lined up to create this movie is so surprising to me, and I could have never called it. It impressed me so much more than I expected it to. I am most impressed by the direction of it and every camera move, all the uses of colors, the use of sound, like the direction of the sound. Like the music in this movie is so important. And you can say this about a lot of movies, and in my opinion, every movie, that like you take out the score, and then what really is it? Where's the emotion? The score in this makes every single scene scary. Like without it, it's just a kid sitting there. With the music playing or with just the sounds happening, it's like, oh wow, this kid's about to do something fucked. You know what I mean? And that to me is the difference between just like, oh, is this a horror movie? Is it not a horror movie? I was really legitimately like, I'm scared about this. I don't like the way this kid's acting. When he's like making the sounds and like talking to, like, the movie does such a great job of setting up fucked up things that you are like, oh, I see where this is going. I don't know where exactly it's going, but it's going to a bad place.
Not going anywhere good.
And the way that they like introduced the different elements of even just showing the little like the snow car or whatever the hell, and I'm like, oh, that's gonna come back. Like they just set everything up in the maze. Like what amazing set pieces. Like so many cool things. That just what a fantastic world. Incredible acting. Music was great. All of that to me, I'm just like phenomenal. Simply phenomenal. Having said all that, it's like I'm a little bit let down by some of this movie in ways that I'm like, God, this could have been one of my favorite horror things of all time. I just really don't like the supernatural stuff. And I get it's like, okay, cool, Tim, you're watching the wrong movie then.
Yeah.
But if you take it out and just make all the supernatural stuff, if that was real, I would have been like, this is one of the scariest, most psychological, real things possible. This movie is so real. There's so much realism. The way Shelley Duvall like cuts him, and it's just a little slice, but he's still like, ah! That's how a real person would react when he's goofily walking up the stairs, like swinging the thing, and the way she's moving. I'm like, there's a real horror here because it doesn't feel like an action movie. It feels like a scary husband going after his wife. Like those moments of the kid acting the way he is and them reacting to him, I'm like, this is scary because this could really happen. When you jump into this and it just feels like a grown-up Goosebumps thing of, oh no, the hotel's evil. The hotel's making him evil. I'm just like, that really to me takes away from if we had a slow burn of, no, it is cabin fever. It is him slowly losing his shit and writing the things. And when she sees the reveal of all of him writing all the stuff,
Yeah.
I was fucking like, this is scary as hell. This is so fucked up to think that this could happen to someone. And then when it's like kind of like, oh, and then he walks down the hallway and Winnie the Pooh's sucking some guy off, I'm like, I don't like that. I think it really takes away from the effect of this movie.
What part of that don't you like?
A lot of it. I just like really.
What is the specific part you have a problem with?
So of course I had to Google it and
I'm
be like,
joking,
"What the
right.
fuck's up with the bear?" And it's like, "Oh,
You just
it's a
typed in
reference
bear sucking someone off.
because it's in the book, and it's just like, oh, it's just like a nod because like there's some character or whatever in the book, and I'm just like, well, that's This movie is so great that just having references and things like that bothers me. Roger.
What about the shining element of it, right? With the kid and the worker there. Was that the element that you're okay with, or you just were not into
I'm
any
okay
of it?
with that. Like, because that's clairvoyancy and all that stuff. Like, there's a level of that's real. You get what I'm saying? Like, there's a level of people do have weird abilities sometimes or weird connections or whatever. If you keep that stuff grounded, that's cool. But and I liked that throughout most of the movie, he only really sees the ghosts and stuff in mirrors or like in reflections or something. And I'm like, oh man, this is good stuff.
Yeah.
But then things start happening. I'm like, no, that actually happened. Like that's that. And when there was the question of
Well,
like,
when it starts happening to Wendy, when she starts seeing stuff.
Exactly.
But the question becomes-
when the kid comes with the bruises and
Right.
stuff, and it's like there's some woman and all that stuff. I was like, oh, this is like some messed up shit. And then it actually like I don't know, they just took a step too far for me of adding too many elements that like I just feel like they didn't need to. And the final shot of the movie, it's fucking bullshit. Get the fuck out of here. Like I don't like that at all.
I think thematically though, like a lot of that could be like I could put a counter argument of being like, yeah, a lot of it might still be in his head, or it really is just a theme of like the hotel evil, or was the isolation bringing out the evil in him, and he is giving into that sort of that dark side of him. I think the movie definitely answers the question that yes, the hotel was evil, but to me as a kid not understanding shit, I was just like, oh, I think he's just hallucinating all this stuff. And like there is that one moment where he's in the bar talking to Lloyd, who we'll get to that actor when we get to it because he's fucking awesome. And then Shelley Duvall pops in and he turns back around and there's none of it's there.
It's all cobweb.
It's all just no. I'm talking about the specific part where he's like orders his first drink.
Oh, got it.
And she goes, there's someone in the thing, Danny's whatever, and the bar's gone. And so in that when I was a kid, I was like, oh, he's just a man. He's just going crazy.
Yeah.
And that made it really, really scary for me. And then at the end of it, you see him in the picture, and I was like, what? It was not crazy the whole time. It was supposed to be some sort of like turn of events. You watch it now, you're like, oh no, the hotel is an evil entity that's sort of pushing him, but it's taking the darkness that was already inside of him and stuff.
Yeah,
No,
that's how I feel. Like the beauty is that it's both. Like it is that he is suffering some mental things going on, but also there is like this underlying evil. And I do think having a really strong like Stephen King background helps me accept that a lot more, because that is like a common thread throughout all of his
100%.
work. So I am curious, like, yeah, I think that's what helps me accept it, but I can see why some of those choices would feel a little bit like out of left field when everything is so grounded up until a point.
And my thing is, I accept it. I just think it would be so much better without it, and it doesn't need it. Like the story's there, like the bits are there, everything is there. Like I feel like you can just make a couple changes to this movie, and I think it works a lot better. And like to me, the coolest thing about the movie is the concept of this bad guy. Cabin fever, getting worse, the horrible things he'll do. But I love the framing of time. Like, I love that we'll just get random title cards.
Checking back in a month later.
But it's like 5 months later, a week later, Monday,
Wednesday,
5
yeah.
a.m. Like,
4
it's
4 a.m.
so weird. And I love that because it just gives you that sense of like, and it's not like it's counting down to something. Like, it's not like it's like the final thing isn't the end of the trip or anything. Like, I feel like that is like, it puts you in such a state of unease. And that's real stuff. It's just, when they make the jump to like some of the other shit. I'm like,
I do love, and I can't really back it up, but in my brain, I like that Wendy starts actually seeing this stuff after she has to do violence. Because she doesn't really see too much stuff going on until she bonks him in the head, which, by the way, is the most horrifying part of the entire thing for me, because it's such a fucking realistic hit.
Yeah.
She goes,
I'm
"God,"
saying.
and he just goes, and then he's just messed up and like,
Dude.
just drooling from his mouth. But I like that as she has to then start fighting and dip into that darkness too. She starts looking around in the hotel, starts like giving her the visions and stuff like that. Like, are you coming with us on this ride? And she goes, "No, I gotta get out of here."
yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think a lot of your criticisms are just general Stephen King criticisms.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Which I've read probably like 3 or 4 Stephen King books, but it's like the one where he's trying to go back and stop assassinations and stuff like that.
Oh, that's such a good
What is it,
one.
1967?
Like 11 something.
Oh yeah, it's the full date. 11 something.
23.
Yeah.
60
I don't know. There's so
something.
many. There's
We're
that.
saying
There's,
numbers.
there's like the room 237. There's too many different numbers in Stephen King stuff.
I feel like there's some of the source material that I really love, and then I think that there's some of the source material that's made much better by some other creative people coming in and being like, what if we pared some of this down and made it a little bit more palatable? But I think it's a lot of that, like trying to connect the world a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like at the ending, I kind of rolled my eyes a little bit, even though I've known that moment forever, right? Like seeing it in context, I was like, okay, whatever. But then this movie was so good that I was like, there's a reason this is here. And then I thought about it more, and I was like, okay, I like it more.
I'm not
I
sure
think
there
about
is though. I mean, like just looking up like the like I was trying to like
Yeah.
Google like what's the reason. No one knows, and it's not like there's like
The reason what?
of like what is the movie like what when you get to, what's the end mean like what actually happened, and it's like there's not an answer.
Good triumphs over evil.
No, but Jack Nicholson's been like a recurring character.
Well,
in
the way
this
I the way I
world, like-
interpreted it is that the like hotel like takes somebody every like generation or whatever it is.
Oh,
right?
you mean
like,
the very
the
very end?
picture,
I'm sorry, I got him frozen in the ice in my brain. I'm like, yeah, you got to fucking sat down. He couldn't
Oh,
find his way out of the
no.
maze.
I'm like the same guy is back from 1921. Like
No,
No.
I thought to me thematically, it's just that like this has been a thing that's
Like
happens
a
to me.
cycle
that,
of
that works.
violence.
Then why does
Yeah.
it look like him though? That would be a different person.
as a fun like. I
Oh,
gotcha,
no,
sort of
man.
sticks out at the end, you know.
All right, let's get into the plot of this, but we're going to do that right after a word from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by New World Eternum. New World Eternum is a thrilling action RPG experience for console and PC players with a vibrant world, vast and beautiful setting, dynamic real-time action combat, and the freedom for players to choose how to forge their destiny. Combat is skill-based and dynamic, incorporating swords, guns, and sorcery so that you can build one character to rule them all as you explore Eternum and unravel the mysteries of the supernatural island that you can't leave. You love playing RPGs alone? You can in New World Eternum, or play cooperatively with your friends as you complete quests, get better gear, and level up. Greg played this at Summer Game Fest on PlayStation 5 and was caught off guard by how much he enjoyed it and how many hours he said he could see himself sinking into the final product. There's boss fights, cool enemies, crossplay, resource gathering, and crafting. So yeah, this sounds like a Greg game. Pre-order New World Eternum now on PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X or S to get the Azoth Stalker Wolf mount and prepare for launch on October 15th.
Ladies and gentlemen, The Shining. Red rum. You gotta just do it with the he talk. It's a puppet. Have you ever had a puppet?
We're not the same person. I don't know when you're gonna talk. Let me try.
Red rum.
Beautiful.
Do I have to go up when you like finish?
It's your interpretation.
Okay,
It's
so then
however
I,
you-
okay, but then you just
Yelled at him for doing it wrong.
We start with a really, really awesome helicopter shot here. And if you look very closely as we come to the hotel, you see the blades of the helicopter, which was a framing mistake. One fun thing to note about
fucking
this.
nerd.
One fun thing to note is that, and again, I read a lot of trivia last night. So, folks, if I got this wrong or if this has been debunked, please leave a comment in the comments below. One fun thing was apparently Kubrick's friend Ridley Scott they were homies, and he was like, "Hey, can I?" Scott was forced by the studio for Blade Runner to shoot an alternate ending where it is a grand sweeping helicopter shot, which is like sort of a POV for the ship or his little car. And apparently they had a lot of footage extra, and he was like, "Hey, can I use some of that for the intro of this?" So I guess some of those shots were left over from the alternate ending of Blade Runner, and I guess Scott's only thing was he was like, "Hey, you just can't use footage that was in the movie," and then that turned out to be a problem because he was like, "Well, we don't have enough." So I guess I had to go shoot some anyway. But
Interesting.
it's
wow.
pretty interesting.
Something I love about, I mean, this is so cool, and I'm such a sucker for movies with credits in the beginning. Like, it's
Yeah.
just, it's awesome stuff. But seeing them, especially with the way the credits, like, just kind of scroll up, it's scary. There's something scary about this from the jump, especially with the sounds, the ominous, like, score going on. But I love the helicopter shot. And like it kind of feels uneven a lot of the time, like as it's like coming in, like the shots aren't like perfectly beautiful, smooth things. And I feel like that is in such opposition to the rest of the movie that is 90% steady cam of them just following people down like these incredibly balanced shots. And like I just thought that it was cool to start off so uneasy to then settle into it's motion, but it's always very, very smooth. Following the little kid on the thing, the amount of times we did that, and it blew my mind every time. I can't believe
Yeah.
how good it looked.
There's if you look, I guess there's a conspiracy theory about the hallways, because the way they built the sets in order to have it continue, he just keeps going in a circle. I don't know, like if you guys can catch that, but they're like, it's like a connected hallway and he just keeps going. And I guess people have pieced that together and they have their own theories about why that is or something like that.
I was reading something saying that like it doesn't make any sense. Like if
Oh,
you
maybe
like,
that was
if
what
you
it
follow
was,
it like
yeah.
on purpose, it's supposed to be like the maze. And then
that's cool.
there is no actual layout to the hotel because
Yeah.
there's not supposed to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Important to note, by the way, on this, I think this was one of the first times Steadicam was used.
It was.
it's the
Yeah, that's
first,
really
right?
cool.
Has it ever been used better? I'm not sure.
And I'll tell you what. So Jack obviously he comes into the hotel, and this is right off the rip. You're like, oh, we're dealing with like the A team here because he walks through the lobby of this hotel, which I would have put dollars to donuts. This is a real lobby because it's lit so beautifully and so perfectly the entirety that. There was one piece of trivia that was basically like for the winter scenes where like this beautiful white light was coming through, they had to light it with so much volume of light and so much heat that during one of the one of the other shoots it lit on fire
Oh my
gosh.
because they had to put like thousands and thousands of watts of light to mirror that snow, even just
To
the
the
snowy look,
reflection of the
which
snow.
is wild,
Oh,
right?
interesting.
Anyway, he walks through and he walks right to the receptionist, asks where the manager is, and we follow him there, and then we follow him over to the manager's office, and he walks in, and that's one of the first, I don't want to say long shots, but longer shots that we get in this, and it's stunning. The manager's office is stunning. We see the color palette here, which is very, very controlled. This is going to be, again, another hallmark of this movie. We're seeing earth tones, greens, and then when there is something bad that's about to happen, what color do we get? That's right, Roger. Red. We get red. We get red everywhere when he sees, the famous Frank Lloyd Wright bathroom that they shot in, which is the red bathroom or whatever it is. Why you would want to pee into a red urinal beyond me, but I'll get fucked up on some margaritas and go into that bad boy. That's wrong. So really cool to watch this from just a production standpoint because you could tell he was very, very, very controlled about where they wanted to go. From here, he's like, "Hey, man, you seem great for this job." And as we talk, as this interview goes on, I'm thinking to myself, I don't know that I would. 5 months isolated, no one else around, just my family, which I'd love. I would love it. The question is, how quickly would Dee pick up a butcher knife and murder me? And I think it's 2 weeks in.
Oh,
I
wow.
think she
Wow,
gets
that's
2
fast.
weeks in, and it's death and then acquitted, and then they make the Netflix story about her.
The thing for me is they had TV. Granted, it was a really small TV in a
Yeah.
very big room, but they did have a
Scooch it closer.
TV.
They did have a TV.
So I was like, okay, they got the modern amenities
could
for
you
the
do this?
time.
Yeah, okay.
You know?
Oh, trying to figure out what that would mean for today.
Yeah.
I think I
like-
can do it. I
Me
think I
too.
can do it, especially once I saw the kitchen. Right, I'm like, oh,
It was stocked.
I'm gaining
Yeah.
45 pounds, like easy. And they didn't seem like bothered at all. They were like, you can eat whatever you want, you can do whatever the hell you want, you can move into any hotel room. Like, we'll get into that later, but like, you could. Why the fact that this family did not just split up and just be like, hey, we're gonna sleep here, you're gonna sleep here. Like, I don't understand
They
why.
stay
No,
in
that
this
was the-
tiny little cottage.
Yeah,
That
they
was
have
the issue, though. They said that no other place in the hotel was heated
Heated.
except for that.
Except for that room.
That little room, which I think that is actually the biggest issue with whether you could feasibly do this, which is like you have this sprawling, gorgeous place, and you are confined to being comfortable in one little tiny room on top of
Yeah.
each other.
We gotta
but
get space heaters.
blankets.
We gotta figure
You got,
this
you got
out.
mad blankets. You got the entire hotel. You could put hella blankets on there.
Dude,
You're fine.
my thing would be this. I'd be like this. You wait 1 week, then you hit up the homies. Come up, we're partying. Let's
Oh,
go.
yeah. Stay
Get
with
the,
us.
get the
5 months.
snowcat, get a couple snowcat rentals. You come up. I mean, you got. We all have a couple friends that would just chill there for a couple months.
Snow,
not even think
bike,
about
Mike.
it. Absolutely. Slappy, let's go skiing. They always get me when they do the tour, and yes, the kitchen, but it's not the kitchen; it's the dry storage,
Yes.
where it's like the Oreos and the
The Ritz
Rays.
crackers, bro. We would destroy
Oh
so
my
many
God.
Ritz crackers.
This is how much of a dork my wife is. She looked at, she was like, I would mess up some of that cereal, that Raisin Bran cereal. But then she goes, wait a minute. They probably don't have milk for 5 months. Deal breaker.
Oh, yeah.
Because they just have
Fair.
powdered milk. She's like, I'm not doing
No,
powdered
I-
milk.
You
That's
wonder-
not even.
I was
gross.
eyeing the
That's disgusting.
Tang. I was like, I
the
feel like
Tang
I'm
caught my eye too.
really situated in a time.
Yeah. funny.
We're in this interview and he's like, hey, you'd be perfect for the job. We established that Jack is a writer. He used to be a teacher, but wants the isolation because he's working on a book he's doing research for, and he wants to finish that book. Everything sounds great. It's just one quick thing. I just want to.
Just a little
Just a
thing.
little thing.
They'll take
Thanks for
you-
driving 3 hours.
Thanks for driving
Appreciate
3
it.
hours. You got the job. Totally cool. Start Monday. Don't worry about it. Also, the last caretaker killed his whole family and stacked them up in room 2.
See, the thing for me that really got me is they were like, in 1970, this horrible thing happened. And I started immediately thinking, would I do this? Like, is this crazy? Like, whatever. I'm like, oh, so long ago. Who cares? That was 10 years ago for
Yeah.
them. 10 years ago for me now, it's like, okay, in freaking 2014, somebody murdered. I'd be like, I feel ickier about this
Yeah.
than if it was
Yeah.
1970 to now. You know
Well,
what
they
I
didn't
mean?
have Twitter
feel
back
you.
then, so you wouldn't,
Yeah.
like no one really
Yeah,
knows
what
about
if
this.
somebody was murdered in this studio 10 years ago?
10 years ago?
You think that would
I-
have been a no-go?
And you
Not
have
a
to stay there
no-go, but I'd
5
think about it more
Yeah.
than if it was in the 70s. You know what I mean?
But what if it was
The ghosts
also
are
on an
old.
Indian burial ground?
See, that's
Oh yeah, that's a great point.
Fair.
That was another one. That was what I was like, we didn't need that particular piece of information here, and it reminded me too much of Poltergeist, which I
That's
love.
exactly what I thought of too.
So he killed everyone with his swap hand with an axe, stacked them up in one of the rooms in the West Wing, and then blew his brains out with a shotgun. Took a shotgun to his mouth, and I'd be like, you know what, this has been a great interview. I appreciate it. You guys validate parking because I'm getting the hell out of here. Of course, Jack is. We go back over and we meet Danny, and Danny's got awesome hair, and he also has a little boy that lives in his mouth named Tony.
Yeah.
And Tony talks real weird, but Tony knows some shit that you don't know, Tim.
Nope.
And
Do you think this
Danny's.
is what Greg Miller was like as a kid?
I know it was because I've seen his videos.
Yeah.
Tony's like, hey man, just so you know, that Danny has this very, very like moment when you're watching this. You're like, okay, it's just his imaginary friend, right? But he goes, I hope Dad doesn't get the job. And Tony goes, he already got the job. He's going to call in 3 minutes and tell Wendy. He says, Wendy, not your mom, not mom. He's going to tell Wendy that he got it. And sure enough, phone rings, and you're like, oh shit, this kid's got the power. Now, of course, your touchstone for this, of course, is Family Guy or Twitter or Snapchat or TikTok
yeah.
or whatever. My touchstone is, of course, the Simpsons episode where they did the
Yes.
shitting.
House of Horrors.
And he's
The
like,
shinning.
he's like, you mean The Shining? He's a quiet boy. Do you want to get sued? And then, of course, that ends with all of them sitting in the warm, glowing warmth of the snow, and they all freeze to death at the end. Awesome. Anyway, he's like, this is gonna be good. And then something happens, and then Tony shows him a shot of the iconic shot. There's like 3 or 4 iconic shots in this movie. One of which is the elevators that are spitting blood out.
Do we have any trivia on that one? How do they do that?
That took 9 months.
Oh,
So
Dang.
apparently, every single time it would happen, Kubrick was like, it doesn't look enough like blood, and it would take, I guess, like 9 more days to set it up. And I think they only shot it 9 times or something like that, but it was over the span of months because the production team had to go back and like reset. I don't know. It was a whole thing, but yeah, one of the things was that's one of the shots that took a really, really long time to get.
it's sick. It's
so
an incredible
cool.
shot.
It's unbelievable. And I say, to me, the three most iconic shots of this movie are that. Obviously, we see it over and over again. Of course, him peeking his head through, which you see on the poster, which Sal Bass did the poster for that. And then, of course, to me, the scariest shot is when Danny rounds the corner,
Yep.
The 2 girls.
and they're just there. The 2 girls are there, who I thought were twins, but it turns out they were 2 years apart.
I had also thought that they were twins, but maybe this is one of those weird, like, we came from an alternate universe things.
I was either the book or the movie had flipped it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We see that shot, and again, pulling the curtain back on my relationship with my wife.
Nick got really introspective.
She goes, it's interesting. It's kind of reminds me of you and me. I was like, why? And then I looked closer. One's just a little taller.
Halloween costume?
Ooh.
I
Almost Danny.
love it. For the longest
Did
time,
you
I
say
wanted.
Yoko's Danny?
If D ever went, if Halloween parties or left the house after 6, I always wanted to go as Batman and Robin, but she could be Batman.
Oh, I love
I like
that.
that.
It would be cool. It would be
And
very
then
cool.
if
Anyway,
but if you went as Danny, then you'd have the little trike, and then you
I
could
want
go
the
as
trike.
Jigsaw next year.
Yes.
Oh, multi-purpose tricycle.
Danny, of course, has an episode where the doctor has to come over, and the doctor is like, "This shit just happens sometimes." Is he ever?
Yeah, just
It just happens.
could just be falling.
Or he just falls. She says, has this ever happened before? And she's like, well, not really, but there was one time where he got like, oh, when did Tony start talking to him? Oh, it was after this injury that happened. Oh, what was the injury? Oh, it was a horribly abusive moment with his
Yeah.
dad that was probably very traumatizing and triggered this inner shining to happen for him.
This is when I knew this movie was special, was the way that they shot and edited the sequence, right? It's just the close up of Wendy saying all of this, right? And they don't show the reaction
doctor.
shot until the very ending, right? Like, we're horrified. We're like, she was smiling 5 seconds ago. Like, what is her reaction going to be? Is
Yeah.
she going to play this one off? And then you turn around, it's like, oh shit, she's nervous about this. She
Yeah.
can tell something's up here.
But
Well, also, another thing that was crazy is like the way that this movie shot, where everything's like dead center of the frame. It's so unnerving. And when you have these conversations and you just have a character, like a dialogue between 2 characters, but it's just shot, not even shot, reverse shot, just like shot. It's like, whoa, I don't feel good about this.
No.
Like it makes it feel a lot more real, like you're just talking to
And
somebody.
claustrophobic.
in the the first section was called the interview. Specifically in the interview, you notice that because there's 2 chairs. And the camera's dead center. And one of the interesting, another interesting piece of trivia was during the bathroom sequence when he's talking to the original caretaker. someone had noted that, and I didn't notice this either, but they had noted that. Do you guys know what the 180-degree rule is? The 180-degree rule is.
Yeah.
Basically, they break it in that, and which makes so. Shot, reverse shot, reverse shot, and then when they break it, he takes the place of the caretaker in the shot, and it's done very, very, very like deliberately,
And
which
there's
is really cool.
similar things to that too, where the characters with the camera would be like coming after a character versus the character kind of leading the camera, and specifically in like the maze scenes towards the end, and like a lot of the trike scenes, you see him, but then it's like when he is running from the things, the camera's moves towards you, and like it just other movies don't do it that way. Like it was very cool to see the camera kind of used as a way to tell you what's happening with the characters. Good stuff.
I do think that's like why this is one of the all-timers and why he's such an amazing director, because everything has a purpose. Like there are no things that are just there to look good or move. Everything is done for a specific reason. Like we talk about the title cards, like that's because they're disoriented. They don't know how much time is passing. They're just kind of living the same day over. Oh, it's 2 weeks from now. It's Tuesday. Oh, now it's Sunday. Like, we don't really know. And, like, the way that they do the steady cam shots where they're disorienting you through the steady cam and, like, showing you how large the space is. I feel like it's just everything is so intentional that that's why I feel like you can talk about this movie forever, because every single thing is a choice, I feel like.
Definitely.
Every single thing you're looking at, you're like, well, it doesn't make sense, but it has to make sense because so much of this makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Specifically, it shows the state of Kubrick when he was filming these things, where you're like, it's a choice, because if it wasn't, he would have done it 60 more times. Because he was a little OCD when it came to that. Of course, we go back up. Now we're on the way to the Overlook Hotel, and hey, a little light conversation. What's the Donner Party? Oh, they ate each other.
I watched it on the TV.
Hey, I had to pull. Hey, Jack, real quick, quick question for you. Maybe we don't tell the kid that. Maybe we just don't tell him that. He doesn't need to know that. We go up in this hotel. I'll tell
Was
you
the
what.
Donner Party like a key like history thing for you guys in school?
Yeah.
Okay. I never know if it's just like a California thing.
The Donner Party is
No.
exactly why we never went on vacation.
Huh.
Because
Really?
we were terrified we'd get stuck and have to eat each other.
Is this what your parents told you?
No, yeah, it just turns out my mom didn't like spending money. That's why we went to Laughlin, Nevada. We go up, and this hotel is stunning. Absolutely stunning. It's boom, boom, boom. Everything was going around. The manager's like, let me show you all around. Shows them the little weird British room. And you can tell that Stanley Kubrick's British, because like, there's a lot of weird touches in here. Specifically, I think the Snowcat was, I want to say that was like driving on the wrong side. I could be wrong. I can't remember which side the wheel was. Doesn't matter. Danny goes to check out the games room, sees the twins for the very, very first time. And we meet Halloran, who is my favorite character in this.
You love him.
Yeah.
You love him. Played by Scatman Crothers. And
Maybe one of the coolest names of all time.
very, very cool. He's awesome in this. Fun little piece of trivia. It was supposed to be Slim Pickens, who was one of the characters in Doctor Strangelove. But he hated working with Stanley Kubrick so much that he said, absolutely not. I will never work with him again.
And I feel that.
As did most people. And I'm pretty sure the actor that played Halloran as well felt the same thing, because it's rumored that he was driven to tears multiple times because of how many takes he had to do of this.
Yeah.
But he's
some of the
awesome
language in this movie, I wouldn't be surprised.
Well,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh yeah.
There's
that
there's
shocked me because I didn't remember it.
Shocked
I
me
didn't
either.
remember it being in there.
I did not remember that either. He's like, I'll show Danny and Wendy around. Of course, we go over to the kitchen, and he calls him Doc. And I never picked up on this before. He just calls him Doc. She goes, "Hey, how did you know we call him Doc?" And he's like, "What are you talking about? I must have heard you say it." It turns out, no, he's got The Shining too, and that's the coolest part of this movie to me.
So damn
I
sick.
rewatched a little bit of this just to get some notes together, and it's very understated, because when he first meets the family and he sees Danny, like, you see it in his face. You see him like look at him and be like, oh shit. And it's super small. It's like a little Easter egg almost,
That's
but
sick,
you should
man.
go back and watch that. It's a dope moment.
This scene blew my mind. It's like a one shot that lasts forever. Like, I felt like we were in it for the entire run of the movie, where it starts, follows them left down the entire hall, across the
So cool.
column, and then all the way into the kitchen, like into the fridge. I'm like, how the hell did they shoot that? It's
100
so sick.
times.
yeah. It was incredible.
But
stuff.
it works. And of course, we get this moment where he's like, "Hey, why don't you guys go check out the room? I'll take Danny for some ice cream. Is that okay? What do you like, chocolate?" And of course, he uses this opportunity to be like, "Hey, you're like me. We
Yeah.
both got this thing. My grandmother called The Shining because we would shine. We'd be able to talk to each other. And I bet you thought you were the only person, but there's more of us out there that can do this. It's telepathy. It's really, really cool. He's like, then he brings up Tony. He's like, oh, does Tony show you things? And he goes, yes, but he only shows me horrific things. I wish Tony would leave me the hell alone. And he was like, what's going on with this hotel? And he's like, well, hotels are like people. Like, sometimes bad things happen, and that leaves sort of a resonance. And so this hotel can shine as well. It can show you things. It can do things to you. Like, so just be, but he's like, but you're going to be okay. I'll leave you for 5 months by
he's
yourself. Totally fine. Your dad seems like a perfectly, adjusted
Stable.
human being. I think he's going to be okay.
But I really like this character a lot, and I don't like what they kind of did with him later on in the
Yeah.
movie because he seems very strategic, and he's like pulling the kid aside, and he knows so much about this. He clearly is attracted to this hotel in some way because of his shining, right? Like, there's a reason he's here, and there's a reason he's talking to this kid. And then the way that they stretch out his entire story, for some reason he's in fucking Florida, and he's calling, and it feels
It's
like a different
crazy,
movie, and his house is weird, and has a bunch of naked women, and then
weird.
and then he finally gets there, and then he's screaming. He's like, where's anybody? He just gets killed. And it's like, what? This kid,
You
this-
know what's happening
Yeah,
here.
this character
Yeah.
is so smart. He literally has a telepathic connection with this kid, and then they just completely waste this character. It feels so bizarre.
That was a move from Kubrick, right? Because I don't think he dies in the book. I'm
I don't know.
99%
He gets
sure.
injured if he doesn't die.
I feel like I remember reading that he was like, we needed some sort of death to like up the stakes in the movie.
It
And I was
makes
like,
sense.
I don't know that was the right character to do that with,
No.
but I
Well,
guess you are
there's-
working with such a limited cast.
Yeah, we got you got no other characters. The rest are ghosts. Important to note, I love a little bit of foreshadowing here. I wrote it down where as they're walking, Wendy's like, wow, there's a lot of activity around. And the manager's like, yeah, everyone's trying to get out. It's the last day. He's like, don't worry, tomorrow it'll just be all of you. And she goes, oh, like a ghost ship. I'm like, ooh.
Classic movie. Never forget.
Terrifying.
That's
I,
what I'm talking
I love
about.
Ghost Ship Tim.
It's
The
on the 13th
opening
floor.
of Ghost Ship?
Sickest opening to a horror movie ever.
good.
Have you seen this, Nick?
Traumatizing.
I've seen Ghost Ship, yeah. I don't recall it offhand, but I
Piano
definitely
string?
watched it.
Iconic.
I don't remember it.
Oh man,
I
One
did
day.
start watching Dracula 2000 last night, though.
Never saw that.
Well, it's
It's
on
a
HBO,
movie.
and you know what? I think you might like it,
I think
Tim.
you might too.
Yeah,
I think it
you
might be up
like
your
it.
alley.
It might be. It's Gerard Butler as Dracula, a very young Dracula.
I mean, a movie called Dracula 2000. I'm in. Like,
I
That's
mean-
the one they go to the Virgin store, don't they? Or is that a different?
Oh, 90% of the movie
Yeah,
is
it
in the
happens in the
Virgin. But like,
Virgins.
did Virgin pay for this movie?
Yeah.
It's Tim. If you like Virgin megastores, you're gonna love Dracula 2000.
That's the one thing I know about Tim.
Oh, Tim loved that. Are you
Oh.
kidding me?
I'm already in. Looking at the pictures of this is everything.
Look at
I
how
want.
young
What's
Gerard
the like
Butler is.
pitch on this?
The
Just
pitch is
Dracula?
it's well, first off, it's Johnny Lee Miller, who I love from Hackers. He's one of the main characters.
Got it.
Christopher Plummer plays Van Helsing's grandson, you think, but really it's Van Helsing because he's been using Dracula blood to like keep himself alive because he can't figure out how to kill Dracula, who he has in his basement. And then robbers come in, Omar Epps and I think Jennifer Esposito come in, and they don't know what they're stealing, and that's the first 10
love
minutes of
that.
the movie. And then Johnny Lee Miller
Just
still
like
has the
Don't
same
Breathe
haircut that he had from Hackers,
vampires.
and he wears a lot of turtlenecks.
Oh.
Actually, I don't know if he wears turtlenecks or not. I might have made that up.
We'll need to fact check the turtlenecks.
Turtlenecks.
Somebody in the chat.
Makes sense with the bites, right? Like,
Yeah, it was late last night. I'll let you guys know. I'm gonna finish it tonight.
Okay.
Anyway, Danny goes, "Hey, Tony showed me this.
The update we were all waiting
Tony
for.
showed me this. Look at how young Gerard Butler was. Can you believe that? That's the guy from 300.
I just typed in turtlenecks and could not find anything. So.
Just type in Johnny Lee Miller, Dracula 2000. Do you know how to spell Johnny Lee and Miller?
Is it Johnny with an H?
Sure. Doesn't matter. There's only one Johnny Lee Miller. Let's
We're
see
gonna
what
send
it looks like.
silence.
Yeah,
See,
he's
keep
kinda-
going.
No,
No.
no,
It's
not at all.
It
No
is a
turtlenecks.
higher cut
No.
crew.
It's not.
No, don't give it to him.
No.
I was wrong about that. I was
turtlenecks.
wrong about that. Danny asks, he's like, "Hey, yeah, that's kind of what he looks like the entire time."
No.
I think it's because he had the shoulders.
You try to argue it's a turtleneck.
Look at how young. Look at how young Gerard Butler is, all the way to the right there. Keep going.
Oh, he
keep
is
going.
so baby.
Look
Yeah.
at how young
Oh,
he is.
I would not
Little
know
movie
that's him.
gamer.
Isn't that
How,
wild?
because this was
Yes.
probably right around when he did like Phantom, or maybe a little bit before.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I think
this
'cause he
movie's
was so
timeless.
baby in
I
that
think
too.
Phantom was maybe
I
a
think
couple
it's
years
very.
before.
Timeless.
No, it's the opposite of timeless. It's
Oh, really?
2004.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Based on all the turtlenecks. Danny's like, "Hey, man, Tony showed me this room 237. What's going on with that?" And Halloran goes, "Just normal room. Nothing really happened there.
Don't
But under
go.
no fucking circumstances do you go into that room ever.
Could have played that way better.
Stay away from it. Okay. Death.
I feel like if I'm in a job interview and someone's like, you can stay here, do not go into that room, that feels like a deal breaker for this scenario. Like,
You know you're gonna die.
Like
Think of something that
there's
was gonna kill you.
only bad things can happen if there's a room I'm not supposed to go into.
100%.
How many rooms are in this hotel, do we think? Like,
At least 2, 3,
Probably like 50.
I feel like pointing a specific room out makes it more likely you would go into that room than just not saying anything at all.
That's fair.
What's the percentage likelihood you're gonna go into that room?
I mean,
think I would go into
237
every room.
implies at least 37 on the second floor.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I'd imagine then that there's
3 floors, maybe.
37 on the first floor. That is making
Least.
quite the assumption there, but
First
Sure,
floor
that's a
sometimes
fair
doesn't even
assumption.
have any rooms.
you're right.
It's the lobby.
All
the amenities.
and a lot of hallways and the ballroom.
That's still a lot of rooms.
Yeah.
I'm with Madeline
For
on
the
this
size
one.
of the hotel, I think there's like 100 rooms.
Let me explain to you guys something about old Nick Scarpino, okay? 5 months, unlimited Raisin Brain. I'm
You're
going
pooping in every
every
bathroom.
one of those fucking rooms. I'm taking a deuce. I'm deucing it up. 100%.
How did I
You got a
know?
map with
Are you kidding me? I'd be like this. Which one haven't I shit in today? 237.
But would you
That's
care
right.
that it was like supremely cold?
I
Like
prefer
the
it.
cold-
You ever see a dog poop in the snow? He's like, "Ooh, this is exciting. I've never felt more alive." Anyway, 1 month later, Danny rides his big wheel through the hallways. And
Oh.
honestly, when I was a kid, I'm like, this seems fucking rad.
This kid is zooming.
He's having the best
And that
time.
camera is following him, man.
my
It's
God.
impressive.
Following him on a obviously Steadicam, but they used a wheelchair for this as well. So you imagine someone's pushing him. He's got the Steadicam, and it just works perfectly. It's super cool. Also, just shout out to the focus puller on this movie
Oh my god.
because there is not a soft image in this whole thing. Everything is tack on. Wendy and
Also,
Jack
shout
talk.
out- we gotta call out the carpet. I feel like it's such an
the
iconic,
iconic carpet.
pattern.
Yeah.
Now that's in everything. I've seen that they reference it in the substance. Like I feel like that's another one of those things that has kind of gone outside of the show.
And it was cool that the kid later on like uses it as like a race car track, which I feel like is a very kid maneuver. So I
100%.
thought that was
Which
dope.
leads to yet another of the iconic shots with a tennis ball rolling in.
Yeah.
You're like, oh god, it's quite terrifying. When Jack, let's see, Wendy and Jack talk about how they're acclimating. Wendy's like, at first I was really terrified of this hotel, and that hasn't really changed. And he's like, really, I felt at home here the second I walked in, like I've been here forever.
Laying on a little thick there. Just a little thick.
Just a little thick.
Almost a little foreshadowing there.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Almost as if I knew what was going on or going to be around every corner is what he says. Winnie and Danny head into the hedge maze, presumably to find Cedric's body.
Of course.
How could we forget?
Are you kidding me? You didn't think at all?
I did
thought
not.
about it immediately.
Got a little
I did
fire in
not.
this.
It's
Have
my
you ever-
favorite, but I have not.
Have you been in one?
A hedge maze? No. I think the closest I get is like one of those weird like corn mazes during Halloween.
Back in the day, I don't know what the event
I like.
was, but in Golden Gate Park every year they would make a hedge maze. So it was fake, but like
terrible idea.
it felt real
How
because
tall
they would
was
bring
it?
bushes in. Like
Yeah.
it was real. It just wasn't like always
Natural.
there.
weren't-
I
yeah.
guess.
Rooted in the ground.
Yeah.
I think Hearst Castle might have like some sort of hedge maze.
That would make
So
sense.
maybe I've been there.
Did they have like a key, like of like, hey, if you're lost, like if you're lost, like how do you get out of this thing? You just
No, you
went
just-
through.
Is the 80s? You
just
die.
yell. or you freeze.
So supposedly, so go ahead.
No, I was just saying, in some of the mazes, and they do in this one, there's like little chimes. So if you find a chime, you can chime, and then someone will come help you.
Gotcha.
Ring a ding ding.
Evidently, they
Ring-a-ding-ding
built
tip.
this maze. I guess in the sound, I forget where they built it, but the production team often did get lost.
So
in it.
when they did do the shot later on, right,
Yeah.
in that whole scene where it's like the top down and like,
So,
was that a matte thing?
That is
or-
one of the only composited shots
sense.
in the film. So apparently they shoot that and then they went up onto the roof. Like they built that section, and that's actually Danny and Wendy walking around it and shot it from like 8 stories up to composite it perfectly into that shot.
with the matte painting. I'm
I
assuming?
imagine
Yeah.
took a little trial and error to get
That's-
that
yeah.
angle perfectly,
It
but
looks really
it's
cool.
really cool.
hella impressive.
It looks somehow fake, but also real, and it's
Yeah.
very unsettling.
Oh yeah.
Very, very cool. We also get the shot, of course, of Jack typing a little bit, but not really, because now he's just throwing a freaking tennis ball all around here. To which, if I were the hotel manager and I found out the caretaker did this, I'd be like, bro, you're paying for all the scuffs on those walls. We got to repaint this whole thing. That's thousands of dollars. That is the scariest part of this movie, that someone could just be so reckless with my hotel lobby.
Messed
Roger.
up.
Tuesday, Danny rides his bike right up to room 237 and decides, hey guys, it's time to dance with the devil in a pale moonlight. He tries the knob and the door is locked, thank God. Meanwhile, Jack pounds out page after page on the keys. Wendy interrupts him, and this is the first real indication that he's starting to slide because he's just even more of an asshole to her the entire time. Very, very abusive, very, very emotionally abusive. And he's like, do you understand what I'm talking about? She goes, yeah. He goes, well, why don't you start right now and get the fuck out of here?
Jesus Christ, man.
And anyone who doesn't think Shelley Duvall is a phenomenal actor, watch this scene and I will disagree with you fully. There is a moment, there's so many mixed emotions going on in her look. Namely, you see her fear, you see the fact that it registers that she's stuck here with this person, and then you can almost see her thinking about Danny. Of like, I have to just keep this together until we're done before my son.
Scary shit.
Thursday, Jack is definitely starting to crack. He stares off into the white snow outside and doesn't even blink. And there's that moment where he's kind of just like drooling, like looking out, and there's multiple shots like that.
And that's I've seen so many GIFs of that moment or GIFs.
You can't do that. Yes, thank you. Thank you for the correction.
People
We're
always
a GIF
cyberbullying
house.
It's GIF.
You signed it.
The creator said GIF.
You know what, Tim?
Creator's not an what is it? The
Etymologist?
Yeah, etymologist.
Okay, well he created it, so like I'm gonna listen to
I don't
him.
give
You
a
know what I
shit.
mean? I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It
I don't know if
makes
it's
me
legal
think
to
you're
do this or
talking
not.
about peanut butter, Roger.
Yeah, that's true.
I was
love
confused.
peanut
I
butter.
still was.
If I say
thinking
GIF,
peanut
you're
butter.
gonna think I'm talking about gifts.
We can all go down this rabbit hole again.
Wendy,
You laugh as you say it.
Saturday, Wendy tries to use a phone, but they're down, so she radios to the Forest Service. Now, again, another telling moment of my wife. She sees this very handsome man answer the radio on the Forest Service, and Dee's like, you know, if you were being a dick to me like Jack Nicholson, I might invite this guy out for a little hot cocoa. And I was like, but you don't know what he looks like.
And these guys
the
are
vibe.
so nice. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like they're
yeah.
just down for a chat. What?
Well, I mean, yeah. They're lovely. What the hell else are they
I
going
think
to do?
they're
Snow
equally as
outside.
bored, probably.
Yeah, they're bored
like,
shitless.
sure,
yeah,
why
but
not?
like they're having full conversations. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, how can I help you? Like, what's up? Like, how's
But
your
then
day?
you always have to say over at the end.
Yeah,
Which
that's
I'm sure they were into, though. They're like, we get to use the things.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
pretty
So
sick.
cool.
And then when they said over and out, I'm like, damn, they're doing this right.
He's like, hey, sorry, the phone lines are going to be down until the storms. We already established also that people can't get up the road. That's the big thing, too, is that they just, for whatever reason, when they envisioned the ski lodge, they were like, actually, I guess when the lodge was built, nobody skied. So they didn't envision ever building infrastructure out so people could use this as a winter lodge. So that's why no one can get to this. And so it just seems very, very irresponsible and potentially an insurance liability to trap 3 people up in this place and potentially to freeze to death. Anyway, they're like, just hang tight. We'll get the phone lines back up when we can. If not, your husband will kill you with an axe. Danny rips around the corner and we get the iconic shot. Hello, Danny. Come and play with us, Danny. Forever and ever and ever, Danny. One of us is 1 inch taller, and she will lord that over you for the rest of your marriage, Danny. Hey, what do you suppose the Forest guy's thinking right now? Do you think he wants to come up and hang out with me? No, Dee. I love you, Dee. I'll be the best husband I can, baby. I love you so much. I love you so much.
Is it only 1 inch?
With Dee?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've gotten
definitely not.
I have gotten a bit shorter. I mean, Kevin's not here. I've gotten a bit shorter as I've gotten older. I think she's somehow gotten taller.
Did you watch this movie with Danielle?
Yeah.
Okay. I was trying to figure out if you were just thinking about her a lot while you were watching it, or like just
Maybe I imagined
she's
her.
not usually this much of a recurring character. In
Oh
the
no,
plot
we've
recap.
had a whole thing going on in the old Scarpino household lately because last year I came to the conclusion and the very stark realization that despite my better efforts, Danielle somehow managed to not watch one single scary movie throughout all of October. I put them on the thing.
tragic.
I was
Cannot
too busy.
happen.
So now she walks in, she's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Nothing. Play."
You're in now.
And she loves them. She loves this movie also. So
Yeah.
she was watching a little bit of it. She watched by the first hour and a half before she had to go to bed. Because this movie, it takes me a lot. I have to pause and rewind sometimes. So this movie took me about 3.5 hours to get through last night.
Yeah.
Worth it. Definitely worth it.
We
Let's
start
see.
getting the murder flashes.
Yes, and that was the part that really scared me because
Yep.
I've never seen that part.
Me
They don't
neither.
do that in The Family Guy.
No, and that to me, I'm like, that is the level of realism / playing like that happened, you know, and it makes it more fucked up to be like these girls, there's visions, whatever, and that fucked up thing happened. That like this was a turning point for me where I'm like, this movie's scary. It's legitimately fucking scary. I am sitting here unnerved by this. Like I'm not happy right now.
Yeah,
you know?
I agree that it's scary. I was finishing it up this morning in the lab, and I was very focused, and Nick came in and scared the shit out of me. So that is one
Not
thing
on
that I will
purpose.
disagree with you on. That I do think it's scary.
Interesting. Yes, I think a lot of this was interesting too because I think the last time I watched this was probably on TV, and so they cut a lot of this out.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, they cut the nudity
That's a
out. They cut all the
great
Fs out.
point.
They cut a lot of this. I think they cut a lot of the actual harder stuff out of this.
And maybe that's why some of the language that they use was so shocking, because I probably have just watched this on TV about.
Oh yeah, I would. If you'd have been like, "Hey, do they use the N word in this?" I'd have like, "Absolutely not." And
Yeah.
then you get to that one scene, you're like, "Holy shit!" They go hard.
That makes a lot of sense.
Danny, it's Monday. Danny wants to play with his little engine.
And if
And-
there's one thing every 90s kid knows, you don't wake daddy.
Oh
wait,
yeah.
Okay? And
made
I
a-
don't
made
mean
a
that in
board
some
game
weird
about it.
abusive way. I'm just talking about the board game. Do you know what I'm talking about? In the
fuck are you
90s,
talking about?
Roger,
Daddy.
there was an iconic board game called Don't Wake Daddy.
I would
all right?
ask to play the trailer, but I feel like we're gonna get Mr. Bucket.
Oh, we're going to get Mr. Bucketed
So
for
I-
sure.
What are you saying?
There's this, it was a whole.
No, what's Mr. Bucket?
Oh, that's a whole saga. That's a whole saga you missed.
There's a bunch of 90s board game toys that all had commercials with like little jingles and little
Yeah, yeah,
songs
yeah.
associated that they would play ad nauseum on every channel. Like the kids just were berated with this stuff.
why I
Hungry
still
Hungry
remember.
Hippos, the Mr. Bucket.
Crossfire.
And then
You
there was
get
Don't
caught
Wake
up
Daddy.
in a-
Operation was another, which Operation we got the like modern
There was also
remake.
the one with
Yeah.
the elephant that shot the like butterflies out of its
I
nose.
always
with the
wanted that.
nets. Yeah.
I never had it.
But
this
Don't Wake
was
Daddy is
Don't Wake Daddy.
you have to go around and like it's kind of like a musical chairs, but like
Yeah,
a board
you're-
game. And the freaking dad pops up and like his hat flies
Oh.
off and
I
Then
don't
you have
remember
to
this at
start
all.
over.
That's
Oh,
crazy.
This was a
didn't like it.
Well, Danny
Prominent
doesn't want to
one.
wake Daddy, but guess what? No worries. Daddy's keeping stand-up comic hours now. He's just still up from the night prior, and he is staring out the window like a psychopath.
It's terrifying. I mean, this kid walking in, and we've all been there. You know what I mean? Sneaking in somewhere, you got to be quiet, especially when you're a kid.
Yeah.
And like for this specific scene of this horrible dad, we already know that he's bad at it, and we also know he's going crazy. It's like, oh, I'm feeling for this kid, and he's sneaking in. And then when it just cuts, and there's not even a wake up sequence,
No.
he's
No,
just
he's just
standing
up.
there. I'm like, this is terrifying, man.
And then the shot of like it's the kid coming to Jack, and then you just see the dad in the reflection of the mirror.
Yes, that
It's
shot.
like,
I was like,
oh.
ooh.
Oof, scary.
And the way he's like, I love you. I would do anything
Oh
for
my
you in the
God.
most menacing way I've ever heard anyone say that before.
And of course he's talking to Danny. He says, "Do you like staying here?" And Danny's like, "I'll say whatever the fuck I need to get out of this room." And he's like, "Cause I love it here. I feel like I can stay here forever and ever and ever." Mirroring, of course, the words
Yeah.
of the two girls. And then
he responds.
Hey, Daddy's like, just out of curiosity, Pop, you wouldn't have hurt Mommy and me, would you?
Man, that's fucked up.
And it's not like a reassuring answer. He's like, what'd your mother say?
Yeah, he's way too like, what's going
He's like,
on
"Why?
here?
What happened?"
Also, maybe we don't give him any ideas if he's not thinking
know.
about that. Maybe we
No.
just like don't.
Let's keep him as docile as possible. A lot of herbal teas for Jack.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Maybe a couple steam baths. Something that's relaxing for him.
But I do like that moment, right? Because it's like the tension between them continues to build, and like outside of the whole supernatural element of it, right? If you take it away, you do see all of like the cracks forming, right? That, and then later on when the kid comes back and he has the bruises, right? And then she immediately goes, "Hey, you did this, of
Yeah.
course, right?" You would assume that, but you know, you
Because
see
there's
that.
no one else.
Yeah, there's
there.
no one else, but still,
And he
you
has
see
a
those
history of
cracks
it.
forming.
Yeah.
We're at Wednesday. Danny sees the door to room 237 is now open. It's got the key in it. He heads in while Wendy does. And again, unfortunately, doing all the heavy lifting in this relationship, she's doing all the stuff he's supposed to be doing.
Ugh, yeah,
I never caught that before.
that made me so sad.
I was like,
He's
what
a
am I
writer.
asking?
He's just there
Just
right.
doing apparently the boiler rooms has a lot to do in the book. They only show a couple sequences in here. Anyway, Jack has a nightmare at his typewriter. He dreamed he killed Wendy and Danny and cut them into little pieces. To which I would be like, "It's time to leave this
Dude,
hotel."
even like while he has the nightmare, we see him sleeping, screaming.
Yeah,
He's just sleeping, screaming.
yeah.
This movie's fucked up.
Very fucked up. Of course, Danny heads back into the lobby, and this is one of the most eerie shots in the entire movie because you see him just from behind slowly walking in, and his collar's ripped.
It's all messed up.
And you're like, oh shit, what happened here? Wendy thinks, of course, that Jack has done this, and she tries to protect Danny because of that one time that he obviously attacked his child. And Jack is just going insane and drooling a lot. Jack, pissed off, heads over to the gold ballroom for a drink, and there is none. And then Lloyd shows up with a full bar. And this little touchstone here, this actor, I like. He played Tyrell in Blade Runner. He played the head of the Tyrell Corporation.
Oh,
Where he had those big glasses on.
yeah.
I thought it was the
He's,
guy
like,
from
more
Back to
human
the
than-
Future the entire time.
Christopher Lloyd?
Yeah.
You know why you thought that?
Why?
Because every character's name is the name of the actor.
Yeah.
Oh, because Danny is Danny.
Jack is Jack
too, right?
Nicholson, Jack, and then Danny's Danny. Yeah.
Except for Wendy.
Yeah.
But that was her middle name.
Oh.
Winston's.
Fuck you.
Shelley Winston Duval.
Wait, what was her name? Like what?
Winifred.
Winifred.
Yeah.
Oh,
He
And
said,
I
"Are you a Wendy
hate
or a
that.
Freddie?" And she said, "I'm a Wendy."
He's
And he
like,
goes,
that's the best.
Cool girl.
That was very
Like,
cute.
that was
don't
really
like
nice. You're like, hey, Halloran, maybe hang out here with us for 5 months and help
He's like,
kill
I'm
this
gonna go
guy.
to Florida.
No, I'm gonna get the fuck out of here. I gotta go back to my badass wood paneled house with all these nudie pictures everywhere. that was a vibe. I don't know why they made that. Maybe that was in the book. I don't know, but that really
That would
paints
be
this
so
character.
oddly
in a-
specific in the
Weird.
book.
It's very weird. I mean, I wouldn't put it past Stephen King.
I feel like it feels like just like a Stanley Kubrick thing.
Yeah.
Probably. Let's see. Wendy, of course, rushes back to tell Jack that she was wrong as she walks into the bar. Of course, the whole thing disappears. It's just Jack sitting in an empty bar by himself. She says she's frantic. She says Danny was attacked. There's someone in the hotel with us. Danny was attacked by a woman. She was in the bathtub of room 237. You gotta go check that out. And then we cut over to Halloran, and he watches the nightly news about how bad the winds are getting, and he has a lot of nudie photos of women on his bedroom. Tasteful. They're tasteful. But, I don't know why you
I
would
feel like
need
in a
one.
bedroom, like it's already not tasteful. You know what I mean? I
don't know why you
I
do
feel
that,
The
like,
like
pictures
whatever,
are
but-
tasteful. The use of them.
yeah,
maybe
if it
not.
was like
Yes.
maybe I don't know, a living room thing where it's like okay, I can see it, but like
can
a
see what it
bedroom.
is.
Is
I
that
don't know.
even weirder if it's
I
in the
don't
living
know.
room?
Because
You're
then
just
it's
like
like
having
you're-
company over, and you're like,
Well, you're like
Look at
starting
my
the vibe.
collection.
You're like starting like, hey, this is my vibe. You know what I mean? Like if you just go to the bedroom and it's like, oof, you know what I mean? Like it's a secret.
is it a
If you're
bigger
down
red
to-
flag if you walk into someone's house and it's in their living room or their bedroom?
I think it's the bedroom for me.
I think it's the bedroom.
I think if I walk into someone's house and there's just like nude pictures everywhere like this, I don't think I'm making it to the bedroom. Like I think I'm like
That's
Yeah.
a good point.
respectfully.
But then, like, when he opens the bedroom door and you catch one little glimpse of it, are you not then more creeped out or less creeped out?
Ugh,
Fair point. Think on that as we
I
keep
think it's
going.
just
Done it.
creepy all the way around.
Look, at least it wasn't on the ceiling. You know what I mean?
Fair enough. I thought there was for sure going to be one shot where it was like another one on the ceiling or a mirror. Jack heads to room 237. Now, this is a piece of Stephen King lore here. In the book, it wasn't 237, right? It was 217. Am I crazy about that? I read something about that.
I have no idea.
Apparently, the hotel was like, don't use that room for some dumb reason. I don't know.
Like the hotel, like the actual hotel.
I guess the hotel they took inspiration from was like, please don't use 217 for some reason. Chat will let me know if there's a hardcore Stephen King fan. Is it because the documentary is called Room 237, right? I'll look it all up later. Don't worry about it. I'm getting too
Joey's
lost.
on
The
the case.
haunted room was 217, but for the movie, Kubrick requested that the room number be changed to 237.
Oh, interesting. Okay, why?
All prime numbers.
Because there was no room 237 at that hotel, so that people wouldn't be freaked out by staying in the Shining room.
That makes sense. Although little did he know that room would have been the most popular.
Yeah, everyone's
Yeah.
like, I would like to stay there.
I'd like to stay in the Shining room. He goes there and he's like, this room's cool. By the way, these rooms are fucking cool because they have like sunken living rooms and shit, which is very like British. You
I
stay in
love
British
a
hotel, it's
sunken
always like a
living
little
room.
sunken thing or something like that. And he goes and he sees oh, there's a lady in the green tub. And this lady is very, very good looking. She is very good looking. And so he's like, okay, we're a little smoochy.
I also didn't remember seeing
little
like
smooth.
full bush, but that's also probably because I think I watched it on TV.
Again, yeah. Channel 5, not showing a lot of bush back in the day. But
Like this was one of those things. Just my notes were just like, oh wow, she's naked. Oh, she's very naked. She's still very naked. She is naked for so long in this movie.
Another piece of trivia: she was a model that got called for the gig of being one of the people in the background for the 1920s sequence. So when people are going around for the 4th of July celebration, she was called for that, and she showed them the portfolio. And she had done a lot of nude modeling, so she was like, "I'm totally fine with this." And they were like, "Do you want to be the person in the tub?" And she was like, "Cool." But apparently, because Stanley Kubrick takes forever to film stuff, she was just naked on set for a very, very long time.
Poor girl.
Yeah.
So,
Supposedly, she was like, "I'm totally fine with this," but I don't know. After a while, you start thinking to yourself, there's other shit I could do with, you know,
Yeah.
there's other jobs that I
It's
could
probably
take on this.
cold.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit. Oh no, not that set. She would have been hot as shit. She probably
with all the
she was,
lights?
Yeah, oh, yeah. That said, they didn't have LEDs back then. That thing would have been so hot.
So help me break this down a little bit. So the characters, now we start getting more people that we're seeing, right? So we know that there was the last groundskeeper used an axe, murdered his 2 daughters, murdered his wife, right? This is not his wife?
This is his wife.
This is his wife. Yeah.
She is the wife. 237 is where he stayed, and evidently, I think, which makes no sense continuity wise because that's not the quarters for the people that work there. Either way, oh no, I'm sorry. That's where he stacked them. That's where the bodies were found. Was 237.
237.
So they stayed in the living quarters or whatever. Killed him, stacked him neatly in this room, and then blew his brains out. And so the 2 girls are his. He hacked them to pieces, and I guess the wife was either like maybe he hacked her to pieces and put her in the bathtub or whatever.
So then what we got going on here of her kind of like turning into like, is that just her decaying over
Yeah.
time?
Supposedly, I guess.
Okay.
That's what I always thought it was.
Okay.
Yeah. Either that or Jack has a fetish for witches because she cackles. Ah!
Yeah,
She's like-
this scene like went from like, oh, I'm into this to like, I'm a little, I don't know. Something about it.
Well, you know.
The casting, I think, maybe threw me off. They looked like different people. I didn't believe it was the same woman getting older.
Not the same bush. You know, Tim, it thins over the years. When you get older, you'll see. You'll be
I
there.
was asking
And that's
for
our
it.
time.
And we'll be right back, everybody.
I made a note not to say that word, but Joey broke open the seal, Your Honor. So there you go.
Yeah, it says right there, no bush talk.
I say no Bush talk. But it's in that regard, that was George W. Bush.
Oh, yeah,
sure,
yeah, yeah.
It's
sure.
actually political. I don't want to bring that into this. Anyway, he's freaked out by this. He goes back. When he's like, "What'd you see?" He's like, "Nothing. Nothing. Not so much. Good." Halloran wakes up and he tries to call the line and is dead. And he's like, "Well, I guess I got to go across the country
We
and
just
call."
keep on cutting back to this. And it's like, it gets me so angry because it's like, this is a good character. I like his connection with the kid. Why wasn't he just on the bottom of the mountain? Like, we could have had one of these scenes where he's like,
Yeah.
and then he had the very polite, and I'm skipping ahead, I know, but like,
Go for it.
they had the very polite scene where he's like, "Hey, guy, can I get the snowplow or whatever? Can I get the thing? Okay, cool. I love you so much. Bye. You're my best friend." It's like,
Yeah.
what the fuck are we doing?
That whole scene was like, what?
And they did it like twice. I don't know what was happening.
It almost feels like comedic in a way. Like
Yeah.
all this craziness is happening over here, and he's like in the waiting room.
And
You know,
then he
he's
just-
like on the plane.
yeah.
He's like, "Oh, I hope I get there in time."
and he just
Like,
dies immediately. Yeah.
Again, one of those things where I blame Stephen King for this. Because if you've ever read a Stephen King novel, God bless Stephen King, but that man does not believe in letting his editor edit.
No,
Those
yeah.
are there's so many scenes like that where you're like, Steve, you gotta cut
Yeah,
this
but
out. We don't
Stanley
need this
Kubrick
shit in
clearly
here.
did not care about like the core of like what Stephen King was doing. So he had the ability to cut and change things.
Well, you have to also understand there was no TV back then in 1980, Roger. So when you went to the movies,
They
you wanted it to
literally
be
have a TV
you wanted it to be 900 hours long because we had
Oh.
nothing else to do.
Yeah, that's so true. Actually,
People saw this movie back to back to back. It was so fascinating. Oh, look at all the color green.
Huge update in the chat for you, Nick.
What's
Bo
that?
H says Nick is thinking of Mindhunter. Johnny Lee wears the shit out of a turtleneck in that.
There you go. Thank you guys. Thank you.
I'm
I
glad
just
that we
remembered-
did-
Is that a
Oh.
turtleneck still?
It's a mock turtle.
Yeah, I
I'll
think
say it's
that's,
a mock neck.
I think that's closer, definitely.
He just doesn't have a clear division of the neck versus the shoulder line because he was working out back then.
Oh, it's his fault now.
Yeah, and that's not his fault. It's by design. Have you watched Hackers?
No.
That's your homework for tonight. Go home and watch
Oh,
Hackers. One of
Hackers
my
is
favorite
great.
movies.
It's that
I've
Euro
also
trip, right?
never-
Is that what I wanted you to watch?
Yeah.
What I wanted you to watch.
Then the answer is yes. Now here's the thing. We'll skip ahead a little bit here. Of course, now stuff's starting to really go. We meet Grady, who is the character taker. Jack goes back, of course, sees the full 1920s ballroom all in full effect. Grady spills a vodka on him or something like that. Avocado, I guess. I don't know what it is. Some sort of coffee liqueur drink, I imagine. Spills it all over. He's like, "Why don't we go to the bathroom, which is full of the red bathroom? We'll talk about this." And Grady's like, "Hey, man." He's like, you're the caretaker, aren't you? He's like, "Nah, I'm not a caretaker." He's like, "Yeah, I think you are the caretaker." He's like, "Yeah, I am the caretaker." And then, you know what? We need you to kill everyone here. And Jack's like, "Okay,
So-
I'm cool with this."
Confusion here, right?
Yes.
So this is a 1920s flashback, but then the guy that killed his daughters is 1970s.
It's supposed to be like that. There's always this thing
Okay.
there.
It's where
Jack is
it's
not
like
necessarily
there's something good here, but then they have to make it all complicated. This evil is constant. There's the past and the present. I'm like, you didn't need that.
But
So
but
maybe-
you do in regards of like if you think thematically, like man's addiction, that like people's addiction, that downward spiral has always been around. And specifically, if you think back to, and this is me just spitballing here, but I'm sure I'm spot on. What happened in the 1920s? Prohibition, right? Like that, the biggest fight America's ever had against alcoholism was in 1920. So you could see sort of like, you go back to that, you see the sort of like excessiveness of them partying and losing control of everything like
celebrating the end of Prohibition.
And it was New Year's Eve, right? That's like a big party.
Was it New Year's Eve or was it 4th of July? I think it was 4th of July.
Was it 4th?
Which sounds weird, but
that's what the painting said at the end.
Yeah, but to me that's even better because it's even more excessive, right? It's like they got together and they partied for 4th of July this hard. What would they do for New Year's Eve? But anyway, to me that was just kind of the theme of it. It's just this ever-present thing that haunts people.
And that would
addiction.
that would actually make sense with like the idea of that this like hotel like swallows somebody like every few generations or whatever. Like if this happened in the 70s, right, and he's in the 1920s, you know what I mean? Like he's the person, he replaced somebody else in the past. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
That type of deal.
I don't know. Tim doesn't buy it.
I
think you're thinking of it too literally. I think it's supposed to just be sort of like a
metaphor.
more
Oh, I know,
metaphorically.
but the movie works literally so well. That's my only problem. We can continue that.
That's fair. Great is like, you got to kill them all. He's like, you know what? We're going to kill them all. We're going to let God sort them out. I love this scene. The actor that plays Grady is really, really good as well. I haven't pulled anything else for him, but I'm sure he's in a lot of stuff. Let's see.
Clockwork Orange, Temple of Doom, Flash Gordon.
Okay, there you go.
Good resume.
He's like, hey, by the way, your kid guy has a cool power. Hey, real cool power. Not saying it's not a cool power. Not talking shit about the kid, but he is attempting to pull someone into this that's an outsider. So you better just get ready for that and stop it. And he's like, okay, I will do that. Wendy tries to rationalize how they're going to get out of there. She hears Tony calling out, red rum, red rum.
So good.
And then she's like, Danny, are you okay? It's like, Danny's not
Roger,
here,
you're supposed to
Mrs.
do the
Torrance.
finger
Red rum, Starbucks.
The Danny's not here, Mrs. Torrance.
Mrs.
Like,
Torrance.
that's a turn.
It's the creepiness of calling her Mrs. Torrance.
Yeah.
Because he called her Wendy earlier, and now he's
The respectful
upgraded.
name,
He's very nice.
He's very respectful.
He's the
definitely-
Usted version.
But is he that? What's that? The Usted. Is he that friend though that comes over and your mom's like, I just love that friend, and you're like, he's
a little
addicted to
Yeah, he'd be
Quaaludes.
talking
Are you
mad.
kidding me?
He'd be talking mad shit about
This guy
you.
is stealing shit from you, Mom. Danny's gone away, Mrs. Torrance. The Forest Service tries to call it to radio, but Jack has sabotaged that now. He's also sabotaged the snow camp. 8 a.m. Halloran gets word back from the Forest Service, can't reach Wendy. He decides to hop on a plane to Denver. That happens very, very fast. Now, we're going to talk about the scene we've already talked about before. Okay. He calls his friend, and his friend comes in from the snow, and he's like, hey, I need a snowcat. Can you hook this up for me? He's like, yeah, sure, man. Okay. Does this scene need to be in the movie? No. I like in my headcanon that he put this scene in the movie because this actor's name is Tony Burton. And Tony Burton played who? Tim? That's right, Duke, Apollo Creed's trainer in Rocky and all the Rocky movies.
Okay.
And I like to think he was just such a big fan of him from that.
Yeah.
I don't even know if the timeline lines up in this.
Okay.
And he was like, I'm putting this guy in my movie because he's so fucking badass.
Yeah, that's a good call.
I'll just go
Come
for
into my
that.
movie and do 100 takes. I love you.
Yeah,
Of an
exactly. I love you.
inconsequential scene.
Exactly. But he hooks it up. He's like, I'll hook it up for you. When are you getting here? He's like, in 10 hours. And I'm like, absolutely not. I'm going home. Wendy heads down to check on Jack and finally sees the manuscript he's working on all these months. And Tim, what does it say?
God.
All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. And it says it over and over and over. And she sits there and she looks at one page and another page, all with different designs of words.
I
and
love
another and another.
That it
goes
looks like
on.
a screenplay or a script or like
every
it's formatted
variation
correctly,
of
yeah.
anything. And I can't believe how long they sit here as she just looks at, honestly, what was probably like 40 different pages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, it felt comical and it pushed through all the way to like, this is the scariest thing I've ever seen. Because like you see it on her face. She's not a bad actress. Get the hell out of here with that
no,
noise.
she's phenomenal.
This scene was incredible.
Supposedly, I think it was Kubrick's secretary typed all that.
Well,
Yeah,
someone
that
had to
makes
do
sense.
it.
Oh,
He tasked her with, and she was like for months just typing those pages out. And in my opinion, I'm like, that would give me so much. As I'm watching this, I was like, I've gotten so much anxiety because the two things give me anxiety. That's it, Joey. The rest
Only
of them a steel
two.
trap.
Yeah.
One,
Lucky.
filling out forms with pen. I hate it because I always
Big
get to the very
requirement.
last line and I screw something up, and then I'm like, I gotta color in the A, and then like they're not gonna take the IRS is not gonna take that. And two, typing used to give me anxiety because I'm like, oh, for sure there's going to be like, how did she? And then you look at the first couple pages, like, how does she have no typos? And then 40 pages in,
So many
there's typos
typos.
everywhere. Like, oh, okay. That's a relief.
The cool, I went to design school in New York City, fancy pantsy, you know what I mean? And I saw this, I was like, this would, I saw this, I was like, this would absolutely, I would win, I would get an A+. If I did this for one of my design challenges or whatever it is, or projects, like, this is like kind of avant-garde shit, you know what I mean? You kind of put that in a museum, it's pretty
Bar's
solid.
real
Do
low
they
in New
sell
York.
this book? They must sell this book, right?
It's awesome. I
Just
would
a
buy
book
it.
that is all of like just this.
maybe.
That'd be awesome.
It's really cool.
Not
If
super
not-
yucky. You know.
Yeah, that's some super yucky shit.
Jack finds her, and this scene is probably the best scene for both of these two in the whole thing. She's got the baseball bat. She's walking backward. He's walking toward her, and she's like, don't hurt me. Don't, stay away from me. And he's like, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just going to bash your brains in. I'm going to bash them right the fuck in. And then she goes, she swings, like, stop swinging that bat. And she swings it. She kind of clips him first. And then she's like, she gets a taste for blood. She's like, fucking bam, just hits him right in the head. Now, of course, folks, obviously a high stress situation. And obviously, if you're not used to doing violence, then you probably would react exactly like Wendy does, who runs away. But in the reality, she doesn't run away. She drags him into the thing. But the reality is, once you hit someone, we like to use this term, in for a penny, in for a pound. You're already on trial, right? Just keep hitting. Just brain this motherfucker, right?
This is legal advice.
It's 100%. As the
Look at the
company,
camera.
as
We'll
the
clip this
company,
out.
as
Verified
the
by
company's
John
legal
Lace
team.
Esquire.
If you hit someone within the head with a baseball bat intentionally, just keep swinging. Swing away, Merrill.
They cannot
away,
acquit.
Meryl.
She of course drags him in. This is a terrifying scene, right?
Yeah.
Drags him into the
Yes.
dry storage, and he's like drooling. And he's like, my head hurts real bad. He's just like, yeah, motherfucker. I hit you with a Louisville Slugger. She locks him in, and then he pops back up, and she's like, we're getting out of here. He goes, well, I got a fucking great surprise for you. It's a great shot too, with the cameras right underneath him as he's like screaming into the wall, and he realizes she can't get away because he has sabotaged both the radio and the snowcat. And she walks out, and sure as shit, he's cut the distributor cap on that thing, and she is screwed, totally screwed.
And that's
then-
why. So that was the moment that I was scared because I was like, "Fuck, he's in the pantry, and all the Ritz crackers are in there. If they have to stay there for another 2 months, they're gonna
He's with
starve.
the food,
man.
yeah.
They have just meat.
Oh my god, so sad. And like lamb, who the fuck, you know what I mean? Like, how do you
Yeah.
even cook lamb? It's not even a real thing.
All frozen.
So of course, then Grady comes up and he's like, "Hey man, how you doing in there?" And he's like, "I've been better. Just got hit in the head by a fucking Louisville Slugger, thanks to you." And he's like, I've been talking to some of the other people, and we're a little disappointed in your performance there. We're not quite sure you're committed to the cause, so to speak." He goes, "I'm fucking committed." And he goes, "If you're gonna go, if I let you out, you got to go 110%." He goes, "I'm your guy." And then the door unlocks.
So cool.
So cool.
Terrifying. Of course, this is right when Tony decides to write his mother a nice message. Now, for everyone else, if someone's coming to kill me, just please write, "Hey, he's coming now. Wake the fuck up and leave." But instead, he writes a red rum on the door. When she wakes up, of course, she sees the reflection in the mirror. And it spells Tim.
Now, did you know that? Like until the reflection, did you
I knew that
piece it
part,
together?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I didn't piece it together. I knew from pop culture.
Gotcha. Lanza did not know it. That was a fun pop. That was a fun pop. It
that
was
is
like,
cool.
oh
That
shit.
It's fun.
That is cool.
Of course, the murderer is right outside the door. She has locked it. He breaks through with a fire axe. They go into the bathroom. She locks that door, and he starts trying to get in there. He starts hacking at that door. There's a tiny little window that only Danny can fit through. And this part is terrifying for me as a claustrophobic person, having to either go through that or face the axe. I'm like, this is a choice that I'd be like, I got to face the axe. I can't get through the little door. Of course, Jack busts through the door, hack after hack after hack, iconic sequence, puts his face right through it, and says, "Tim,"
Here's Johnny.
which at first Stanley Kubrick didn't get because that line wasn't in the script and it was an improv from Jack Nicholson. And Stanley Kubrick's British and by the English, and over there they didn't get Johnny Carson.
That's
so he's
so
like, "What does that
interesting.
mean?" And he's
Oh,
like,
is that what that is?
Yeah.
"Here's Johnny,"
Johnny.
was what Ed McMahon used to say every time Johnny. Bam, 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 bum, bum, and he walk out with his hand in his pocket.
Gotcha.
So that's how they used to introduce Johnny Carson. That was the iconic line. And so he says, "Here's Johnny." I guess that's what he's saying.
I feel
I
like
don't
that
know.
line's so like iconic. It has superseded its reference, right?
Yeah.
Like
I
people don't
100%
think about
agree.
like why he would even say that. They're just like, it's so iconic. It's just the thing he says.
Yeah,
I never thought about it.
I would think that a lot of people just think his name is Johnny, like from who haven't even seen the
John
movie.
and Jack are freaking nicknames
true.
for
Yeah.
each other, which is
Interchangeable, yeah.
bullshit.
Oh, he
It's like,
seemed
I guess
weird.
Wendy is short for Winifred or whatever. Get the hell out of here.
What?
That in this movie, Bear, that's
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah,
They
That's
say it.
fucked up.
it's fucked up.
That's fucked up.
From
You
the
know what
mouth
else
of babes.
is fucked up? I just remember that there's like a burger restaurant in my hometown called Red Rum Burger, and that doesn't seem
Appropriate?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Just-
terrible.
I don't know that I would want to. That would imply maybe that you're
It applies
eating
a lot, yeah.
some of these
Well,
words.
maybe some cows have been red rummed, you know?
There is a 21 Savage song called Red Rum. Pretty good.
Oh, really?
Pretty good. New song.
Pretty
new song.
good.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Awesome sequence too. Another iconic shot here where before he gets through, he's hacking through the door, and every hack she is just screaming. And those screams are just so fucking real.
So
and it's so
good.
crazy. And of course he reaches through and she took that big ass fake looking butcher knife, or like kitchen knife, and just slashes his hand. It's like, ah! And he runs off. And she's like, shit, I think I'm safe. Because Halloran's now there. Halloran has come with a snowcat that's working, and he's like, hey everyone, is anyone here?
Hey,
To which
can I
I'm
make
like,
any more noise? Is it possible?
Shut up. And of course, Halloran walks in and just takes a fucking axe to the chest. Boom. Goes down for the count. Danny sees this. Danny screams because he feels it with the shining. And then Jack's like, oh, I know where you're at. He's in the kitchen. He was hiding. And Danny's like, shit, I got to run out. And the only place I can run out to is the snow maze. And Jack turns
Snow maze. I do like that it's now a snow maze.
Well, I also love the shot where she's like, they're on the second story, but the snow has engulfed them to the point where he can just slide down
Yeah,
it.
the snowdrift is so cool.
It's cool.
And they set it up earlier, too. You can see it when they run by that it's all the way up to the second floor.
Yeah, it's cool.
Sick.
They, of course, run into the hedge maze, which is now covered in snow. And this is where we get the awesome shots of Danny running from his father, who is running at him with an axe with a limp and the head's messed up too. But he's still going after him. And then they kind of get lost, and Danny stops for a second, and he realizes he's been to this maze before. He kind of knows his way around. And if he stops and backtracks, Jack will get completely lost. So he
God.
backtracks and like
So
hides.
smart.
What a smart kid.
I know, it's awesome.
I would have
Awesome.
gotten murdered.
Yeah.
So easily.
I probably wouldn't have gotten murdered, but I definitely would have been like, I'm just tired. I would have pulled the Jack. I would have just sat down. And of course, Danny makes it out as Jack is screaming, and he can't figure out what's going on. He's wild with rage and exhaustion, and he eventually just sits down as Danny and Wendy make it into the snowcat and take off down the hill. And then it immediately cuts to a shot of Jack frozen stiff,
It's
just
crazy.
staring out.
Am I alone in
No.
this and just being shocked that was a real image from this movie?
It's hard because I knew.
But
Yes,
you're like,
yeah.
oh, man.
I distinctly remember the moment. I knew about it before I watched this one, but I remember learning where that GIF and where that image was from, and I was like, I can't believe
Can't believe
that.
you
So
keep
yeah,
doing
no, I
this.
feel that.
That's crazy.
He knows he's doing it.
He's doing it on purpose.
Yeah, I know.
To upset me, and it's working.
It's upsetting me as well. I'm upset that you're upset,
Yeah.
but I was
Oh,
also
Jim.
upset, so it's a cycle of upsetness.
Yeah.
Fuck y'all.
The last shot, of course, we go back to this iconic lodge, the entrance lobby rather, and as we go toward the gold ballroom, we see a bunch of pictures hanging on the wall. One of which has that 1920s party, and who is chief among them? Dead center, Jack.
This shot starts so far away, and I don't know how they did it, where like everything stays in focus down the entire
The focus
hall
puller should've got an Academy
into
Award.
the picture.
Yeah.
Like this is some crazy shit.
Y'all understand they didn't have autofocus back then, right? So there's just some dude like this, desperately trying not to get Stanley Kubrick to fucking yell at him.
That guy has arthritis now.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah. Oh, yeah. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is The Shining.
Yay.
Oh, Sherlock.
More turtlenecks.
Is this him? Same guy?
That's Johnny Lee Miller.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Sherlock.
That's him
I've
from
never-
Sherlock, though. It's a really good series. Sherlock, him and Lucy Liu. She
Right.
plays Watson. It's really good.
Elementary.
Elementary, yeah, that's right. Also to note, just a little bit of trivia for Dracula 2000. Both Christopher Plummer and Johnny Lee Miller have both played Sherlock Holmes in different series.
Wow.
In case you needed a little bit more.
So is Robert Downey Jr.
Watch it tonight. It's true.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me you're gonna make Gio watch Dracula 2000 tonight on HBO
Oh,
Max.
I don't know that I have.
I
that
think you're
kind
gonna
of
like
pull
it.
right
I
now,
actually
but-
think you'll dig it.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, it seems like my shit because I'm a bad person. But we don't have much here. But Ragu Bagu, we have to do it. Da 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 da.
Ragu.
Da 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 da.
Bagu.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Rad Guys Talk Bad Guys. Here for The Shining, where I guess we'll just define it because this will go number one on our list. I'm assuming Jack and the Overlook Hotel are
Yeah.
Yeah.
the bad, and alcoholism. Substance abuse, also not good.
Yeah.
General abuse in general. Yeah.
Yes.
Bad too.
But
He's
Jack is
real
definitely the
bad.
guy. Yeah.
And he's scary. Everything he does is freaky looking.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Maybe Wendy's wardrobe.
And
on
when
the list.
I would personally
I
put
like
it
your
there,
outfits.
but yeah.
I do too.
We didn't
I
talk about
love
the
it all.
kid's sweaters. The kid had a fucking.
The kid
We
had-
talked a little bit about it.
No,
We
he
talked
was
about
But
that.
his fit is nuts.
That's
Yeah.
what I'm
He
saying.
looks great
Jim,
all the
you
time.
may have been about. I'm talking.
I was here.
All that shit is. Well, we talked about this already.
I don't
Remember
know.
she brought up the Disney sweater? I'll tell you, they're all.
Pulled out the
Yeah.
9/11 sweater and the Mickey sweater.
My bad,
Yeah.
my bad.
No,
I
that's not
apologize,
your
I
bad. It
apologize.
happened. Look at
Roger's
I
so
don't even know if any of this
concentrated
is
on getting
real.
the finger movements right.
we're all
you
in
know?
The Shining right now. We're all shining.
I appreciate
each
you
other.
giving me the out though and saying that I was in the bathroom. I would have taken it.
I know. I was
Oh,
trying
that
to
sweater
get it for
is
you.
dope.
I mean, I'd wear
got
that.
the stuff.
You can see Snowbike Mike in that outfit right now. That's
Yeah,
sick.
it's true.
I mean,
Don't show 'em
Snowbike Mike literally wore this outfit like a
true.
week ago. It's just a black overall.
Badass kid. And yeah, so there you go. So we'll put that as number one.
Put
for
it at
now.
number one, and then ranking. Obviously, this is number one. I'm very interested if there's even a chance the next one beats this. I don't think there is, because this shit's good.
Have any of you seen Doctor Sleep?
I have.
Oh, okay. So it's Tim and Roger. Or yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize you've seen it.
I
Did we see
you know,
a screener of it?
no, I
Oh,
watched
maybe
it.
I went with Kevin.
I watched it on Netflix like a few years back. I had never seen it. It didn't interest me, and I don't know that I really understood that it was a literal direct sequel to The Shining. And once that happened, I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And I didn't realize that they would have done that. And then I was like, oh, right, it's Stephen King, and like he do whatever the hell he wants in his universe. And so I started watching it, and then that was right around the time where I was like, is Rebecca Ferguson the greatest actor of all time, and should she be in everything? And so her being in this, I was like, I'm in for this.
We got Rebecca Ferguson and Ewan McGregor.
Yep.
And maybe some.
In.
Yeah, the wardrobe choices in this one are very fun.
Oh, I can't
costume,
wait,
yeah.
dude. That's awesome. Well, next week we will be reviewing Doctor Sleep, continuing The Shining in review. Madeline Stanley will be joining us for that as well remotely. But until then, Madeline, where can people find you?
You can find me everywhere at Mad Exposure. I'm on Twitch streaming some spooky games. If you like spooky movies, you might like me playing spooky games. Also talking a lot of horror movies over on Twitter at Mad Exposure. You can also check me out talking about other horror movies on Murder by Merton's podcast. We've talked about a lot of fun horror movies over there. So give him a check out. And yeah, on Instagram as well. Nothing spooky there, just some fun photos.
I love it. Go do that. And Roger and Nick, some type of combo, like, take us out.
What? Oh.
Bye.